We're ready. It's 8:59. Good morning, everyone, and Happy New Year to all. This is the second draft of the Dysart budget for 2021. So we'll get started right away with Mallory, if you don't mind doing a roll call for attendance.
All right, we'll get started. Councillor Clark?
Present.
Councillor Donaldson?
Present.
Deputy Mayor Kennedy has sent his regrets. Councillor McKechnie?
Unmute.
Present.
Councillor Smith?
Present.
Councillor Wood Roberts?
Present.
And Mayor Roberts?
Present.
Perfect.
Thank you. So the first item is to adopt our agenda. So I need a mover seconder to adopt our agenda today.
Yeah. Madam Mayor,
Yes.
could I add something into the agenda?
What is it? And we'll see.
It's an item I think we've missed with regard to community information education. I'd like to add into the section on items for consideration by council.
Oh, certainly. I don't think that needs to be an agenda item. I think you can just bring that up during the budget process. In fact, anyone can bring anything up if it relates to the budget throughout the budget process. It doesn't actually need to be a separate agenda item.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, no problem. So I do need a mover and seconder then.
Yeah.
Okay, moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Smith. Be it resolved that the agenda for the special meeting of the Council of the Municipality of Dysart et al. Held on January 8, 2021 be approved as presented. All in favor? And that is carried. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we will move right into the budget review, of which at this point, similar to as we have done with other budget meetings, I'm going to turn it over to our treasurer to more or less chair and do her presentation. So welcome, Barbara, and thanks for all your hard work. I know it's been a busy week for you, so I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Roberts, and good morning to the members of council. Welcome to the second draft of the 2021 budget. The layout of today's presentation will be, I will be presenting top level changes that occurred since the first draft that was presented back in December. And then we can have a Q&A on any questions that council may have or items that they would like to bring forward for consideration. And there are a few items that we'll need to clarify in terms of bringing them into the budget. So we'll discuss those as we move through the presentation. So what I'm going to do is share my screen with the PowerPoint. Okay, you can all see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we'll start off with just a recap of 2020. We are still working through the final figures. Again, I would just like to reiterate 2020 has been a very exceptional year for the municipality. There's been quite a bit of activity surrounding the current COVID pandemic. We've actually been able to manage through very well. So once we're finalize the figures, we will be looking at bringing in some of the safe restart money for the operating pressures that we have experienced. Two areas that we're looking at right now are in our arena and our medical center for some significant losses in revenues. Again, just to reiterate, we do have the Emergency Control Operations Group that is met regularly throughout the year. Quite a bit of time has been spent in the meetings. Basically, we have attributed 1 full-time equivalent staff with manpower towards these meetings. So we'll move on to municipal taxation, and the proposed changes for the second draft are looking at a little bit of an increase on the levy, 0.22% or around $22,000. Again, the majority of our levy is made up of residential, 95%, and the residual is the commercial and the industrial. Excuse me. We did see growth in 2020, and that's just under 1%. So we will benefit from that this year as well. So if you're looking at the impact per $100,000 of assessment, the residential rate will increase by 66 cents, commercial 98 cents, and industrial $1.13 per $100,000 of assessment. So here, this is just a little bit of a picture on comparing our municipal tax rate with the county and the education. Keep in mind that we haven't received final figures from the county or the boards of education. And here you can see the impact on the commercial rate. Again, the county and education levies, they have yet to be finalized. So again, obviously our levies are trending upwards. 2021 would be 0.22%. The total levy for 2021 is just over $10 million. The other piece I wanted to point out was in 2021, the CVA is based off of the 2020. It was the intention of MPAC to issue a new CVA year, but with the pandemic, that has been deferred.
Can you just explain the CVA, is the cycle?
It's a 4-year cycle, yes. So it's a 4-year evaluation. And in the previous CVA, the 4th year had expired in 2020. 2021 would have seen a new CVA for the next 4 years of 21 to 24. So moving on to our funding. Let me just see here. Okay. Yep, we're good. Okay. So obviously we have 3 sources of funding, one being our municipal taxation, the other being grants, and the third being other sources. Basically, you're looking at user fees and drawing from reserves, any sort of debt. So of the total levy, the 10 million, that's going to cover 58.4% of municipal expenses. So it's down just slightly from the first presentation. And so again, the key grant here is our Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund for the $1.8 million. And here we see just a picture of our sources of funding, and you can see that our property taxation is working harder for us. And grants, there's quite a few grants, but also it is a very competitive process as well. So one of our sources of funding is reserves, and there was one minor change on the reserve balance from the first presentation. And that is drawing an additional $20,000 for the proposed work at the Klondike boat launch. So basically 2020, we're estimating to close out with just under $3.5 million in reserves. And in 2020 or 2021, the net reduction will be $200,000. And you can see we're going to draw $844,000 on reserves, and we're going to transfer $644,000 into reserves. So here we see the reserve balances year over year. And so it's been contained somewhat, but I think the goal here is to look at ways of increasing our reserves incrementally. So hopefully that will put us in a good position for some of those events that we cannot predict. Here we see expenditures by department. And again, our three key departments here are transportation, protection, and environment. So basically our roads, our landfills, and policing. So the next slide here will warrant some discussion on our grants. We do have some grants that we provide year over year. One of the grants that we've been providing is to the Rails End Gallery, basically $50,000 a year. At the last council meeting, there was a delegation from the Rails End to request support for some additional operating expenses, namely for propane and hydro. The request is looking at $6,250. The $50,000 is in the current budget. The $6,250 is not. So we need some clarification on council's desire for that additional operating expense. The next organization is the Halliburton Lake Cottage Association. And so typically they've been getting $1,600 a year to help with some of the maintenance in the beach area. This year, we've received a request for two items. The first one is for shoreline vegetation for $1,500. And then they're looking at some support for a summer student to complete the beach maintenance, and that's about $1,000. So again, the $1,600 is in the current budget. The additional $2,500 ask is not. The third request that is not in our current budget is from our sculpture forest. Again, there was a delegation at the last council meeting in December, and they're looking for some additional support for the operations of the sculpture forest, and they're looking for $12,500. So that is a new request. Another item that's not on this slide here, but I see through the BIA minutes that they're also looking for some support, and not so much a grant, but potentially the municipality providing some support in downtown maintenance, specifically for the flowers, watering the flowers. And that would basically be throughout the course summer months, starting mid-June to mid-September. The estimated cost, just looking at the plan at a top level, could be potentially around $5,000. So moving on to some of the changes in the different departments that have been reflected in the second budget draft. There's been some modernization money pulled in to fund the portion of the asset management plan that we're working on. We received the insurance renewal for 2021 shortly after the first presentation, and much to my surprise, there was quite a large increase. We're looking at $53,000. The market is hardening. there are two policies that are basically driving this increase, and that is our liability and our property coverage. So the third item here is the strategic plan. We estimate the plan will be about $50,000, most likely predicting that we'll consume about $25,000 of that project in 2021, with the balance carried over in 2022. The portion for 2021 will be funded from the Municipal Modernization Fund, and it is the intention for the 2022 portion to look at some grant opportunities out there to get some additional funding for that. Under protection, namely the building department, we had initially budgeted for some permitting software, namely the cloud permit platform. That has since changed based on the presentation from the chief building official at the December council meeting. They're now looking to move to the CityView mobile option for the permitting software. So there is an additional cost of $35,000 for that move, and that will be funded from the deferred revenue that we have in the reserve for building. So the net result on the levy for that change will be zero. Moving on, excuse me, moving on to transportation. We've since discovered through working with the consultant on our asset management plan and some other discoveries that staff had made regarding the DOT software, which we currently have to manage our roads network. Originally, we were looking at, through the asset management plan project, of purchasing software to manage the asset management plan. As we've become more familiar with the DOT software and the benefit of the aesthetic software from the asset management plan, we've realized there's some duplication. So what staff are proposing is to purchase an additional 2 modules from the DOT software that will cover wastewater, structures, facilities, and fleet. So that basically staff is working with one software platform to manage our assets. So the additional cost is $17,400. We did not originally plan on purchasing the asset software in the first draft. However, that purchase will also be funded through the municipal modernization. So again, the net impact is zero on the levy. We also have the Klondike turnaround at the boat launch. That will be funded through the reserve. The original budget had proposed to purchase 5 units, 5 AVL, forward-facing AVL cameras. So staff are looking to make a little bit of a change there in terms of when we acquire AVL units. Rather than acquire them as a lot capital expenditure, it would be more practical to equip each new unit with the AVL as part of the acquisition cost of new units. So then it would be as required through the vehicle replacement program. So originally we had $61,000 in the budget for that project, financed through the development reserve. So what we're looking to do is rechannel that capital expenditure into 2 projects, one being a network traffic count for $10,000 and the other being a speed limit review that will cost $47,000. So the residual of the $61,000 is going to purchase 1 new AVL unit for our vehicle this year. And it's actually a demo unit that we have right now. that we will purchase outright. It is actively in one of our units today. Moving on to the environment, there's been a reclassification of revenues. Historically, we have included scrap metal revenue under the tipping fees. And so that is distorting the actual tipping fee revenue. So there's been a reclassification of $60,000 of scrap metal out of tipping fee revenue and into a separate line item for scrap metal revenue. So the net revenue has not changed on the budget. It's just been a reclassification. The original tipping fee revenue was quoted at $640,000. It will now be $580,000. So some items for consideration since our last budget meeting that have come forward is the first one is an economic development reserve, and this proposal would be looking at building a fund for any future development requests that come forth through developments within our municipality. And the example may be that there's a new retirement home going in town, and there may be an ask for some relief in terms of sewer services. Rather than giving that particular service in kind and stressing a certain part of the budget, we can actually pull these funds out of this economic development reserve and then fairly still record our revenues in the respective budgets. Another example may be relief on a building permit, which in the past would have been drawn directly out of the building permit revenue. Again, the actual in kind would be drawn out of this reserve here. The next two items are a couple of maintenance items over at the one being the curling club and eaves trough repair, and the second being just a little bit of cosmetic repairs at the arena in the community portion upstairs where the Sports Hall of Fame has their display. So those two requests there, one being $5,000, the other being $2,500. Those are estimates on what we think those asks would be. The last item, and there has been some discussion going on historically, is the turnaround at County Road 10. We have yet to see an estimated number. I understand that the discovery work is still ongoing, but I thought I would just put that point on the agenda for discussion. So to close out today's presentation, we just have a slide here again showing us where our tax dollars go. And again, our top three services are transportation, protection, and environment. So that concludes the presentation today, and we'll open up the floor for any questions and further discussion on our items for consideration.
Thank you very much, Barbara, for that overall presentation. I'm wondering, so that we don't bounce all over the place, if we sort of focus it, because right now there's probably, you know, each councilor might have 5 questions, and we'll be talking from, you know, $5,000 for eaves troughs to what roads are we doing. So what if we, to keep us focused, what if we go to the transportation department and sort of just deal with all the concerns, and we deferred the item, which is the road resurfacing project, and bring Rob in and sort of deal with all things to do with transportation, and we'll stay focused on some of the grants and other requests. Is that okay with council? I imagine that's, thank you. Okay, I imagine that's where a lot of the questions are going to come from, and then we'll sort of do them section by section. We'll deal with all the grants, and then we'll deal with the other considerations. So let's, if that's okay, Barbara?
That works.
Otherwise, one councillor asks a question to do with Rails and Gallery, and somebody else has a question about roads. So I just think we'll do transportation and try to get things, here comes Rob. Morning.
Morning.
Sorry to bring you in faster than you thought, but when Barbara opened the floor up to questions, I thought to keep us councillors focused, we'll just deal with all things transportation first in
Okay.
and environment. Maybe we'll start if we want to pull up, we have that included in our package, which is the proposed capital road resurfacing, and then we'll deal with all the other items like the ABL cameras, all of that. So if that's okay, I'll turn it over to you to do with the road resurfacing that we deferred that section at our council meeting.
Yeah, okay. Actually, I think it may be easier, Madam Mayor, say this report's been out there. We've had a bit of back and forth on it. And instead of me beating this dead horse, is it easier just to have the questions fired at me right from the start?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. So I will take questions questions to Rob regarding anything transportation. Okay, Councillor Smith, I certainly have several, so I didn't want to be the only one, but Councillor Smith, go right ahead.
Thanks very much. And first, Rob, thanks for your response to the questions I submitted. We didn't get to this report back at our December meeting, and quite a bit of clarification provided through those. But it, some of your responses sort of raised some additional questions in my mind. So if I might just start at the top in terms of your response to question number one. You talk about the key objective from a DOT point of view to achieve that network performance of 65 out of 100, given the budget. And you also further on in that paragraph, said that DOT does not start at the top of the list that's based on traffic volumes, but calculates where roads fit based on network priority. I was curious as to exactly what does that phrase mean, but calculates where roads fit based on network priority. Given that council had sort of said, hey, we want to get some of these roads that are high traffic roads and get them converted from gravel to a hard top surface. And I thought that was a council priority, but somehow that doesn't seem to have driven out the DOT result.
Yeah, and to start with that, the reverting gravel back to hardtop is very much in the program right now. I want to say I'm losing track of my months here, October, November, I brought forward 7 different gravel road classes, starting at, very lightly traveled, flat, seasonal, all the way up to high speed, terrible terrain, that kind of thing. And, each class was assigned, it was weighted versus, is it a surface treated candidate or not? So those 7 classes are in there. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit on you. You had brought up something similar with hardtop roads. Should we be breaking them down a little bit more? And absolutely, I would love to do that with the hardtop roads as well. The gravel roads were it was a bit of an easier solution to do the gravel roads. They're a little easier to work with. When you get into the hardtop roads, then you get into should it be surface treatment? Should it be asphalt? We haven't had that conversation yet. We're looking strictly at hardtop roads versus gravel roads. The hardtop can be broken down further, into hot mix asphalt, double hot mix, surface treatment, all kinds of things. That's a much bigger beast to tackle. My whole intent for this year was to get a 1, possibly 2-year program based on the network 65. Although we say a network, not all roads are part of it. We've talked about seasonal roads such as the Kenway. Now we circle back to the Kenway. It's about 12 kilometers long. We don't plow it in the winter. It actually becomes a snowmobile trail. So that 12 kilometers, although it's accounted for in our network, is not part of the capital program. So that's one take on it. And as we use traffic counts to prioritize roads, absolutely. But from a network perspective, if we have a traffic count of say 5 on a road that's 5 kilometers long, if it has a really poor condition rating, it may get bumped up ahead of a higher traveled road that's shorter just to get that network up to a 65. So I don't want to lose sight of, we're looking network wide here, which takes in every road we have. And some of those roads aren't part of the capital projects, but they also count towards our network PCI. Those roads in particular are generally taken care of from the maintenance budget. And I probably bounced around there a little bit on you. Certainly circle back to anything I've missed or you need further clarification on.
Okay, thank you. If I might continue, Madam Mayor.
Yep.
So thanks for that, Rob. There's a variety of topics that come from that. Maybe to stay initially focused on some of those roads that I think I and other councillors thought would get addressed in the next year or two. When you gave us the traffic counts report back in September, if I recall, there were several roads that their surface right now is gravel that were identified as high traffic roads. And so one of them, a very short road called coincidentally the dump road that goes into the Canisius landfill. It was, I was going to say it was in your top 10. It was actually number 13 in terms of traffic across Dysart. And it's gravel, and it's part of your 2021 converting it from gravel to a hardtop surface. But there's several other roads that were in that first page of the high traffic volume, Redken would be the one stretch of Redken, from County Road 7 into Whiffletree. That's going to get done in 2021 in terms of a hardtop. But the ones the portions that are gravel, so further down Bitter Lake Road, it's gravel. Irish Line is gravel. The stretch of Redken that's down towards the P-Law Bridge and beyond over to Boyce Bradley, and Canisius Lake Road from Paddy's Bay down to the dam are all gravel right now. I think I may have said Redken twice. It's actually Bitter Lake was the one that is higher from a traffic point of view. And none of those are getting done in 21 or 22. And I guess that came as quite a surprise. And, as I said in my note, I don't believe it's council's job to, lobby for particular roads. It's based on our own preferences. It's to establish criteria that you can work with and come back and tell us about the impact of that criteria. And are we getting the results that we expect based on the dollars we give you and so forth? And so it's pretty surprising that so many of those roads that are high traffic that are currently gravel aren't getting dealt with. And is it the dollars that are holding you back, or what is it that's causing those not to get addressed sooner, if you like, in this 2-year plan?
I would say, just from the conversation we're having now, and there are other roads, we can't lose sight of, there's Canyon, there's Dunn Road, there's Winona Lake, there's no shortage of roads that have been reverted back to gravel. But I think what we're losing here is, it's not so much we want to resurface the road because it's in poor shape necessarily. I think it's that council wants to restore the level of service that the road once had. If you look at a Redken, and say, I'm just trying to look at it now, it's rated at about a 68 out of 100 right now. So given the software, there's no trigger for it to get a treatment. It would be a routine grading, it would be that kind of thing. Once it hit, I would say, 50, probably, if it got down to about a 50, then it would probably trigger a treatment of some sort. And that's when our different gravel classes come in, and the budget that is available at the time. So, in our highest gravel class, which would be high speed, rugged terrain, high volume, we're saying it could have, I want to say off the top of my head, that the treatments available to it would be an upgrade to a surface treatment, or we'll put 4 inches of gravel on, depending on budget. So as many parameters as we can put on there, I think at the end of the day, for the roads you're speaking of for sure, and the other ones I just mentioned, I don't think it's a case that the roads are in bad shape right now, because I don't believe they are. 68 is not bad. I think it's an expectation, and it was to restore a level of service that was once there. And that wholly lies on council. If they want to restore that level of service because it was once there, we can put it in, absolutely. But if we're relying on the software to trigger that work, we're gonna have to wait for it to fall down to the threshold.
Okay, all right. Yeah, thanks for that. Again, Madam Mayor, I could ask a couple other questions, or
I just, that's, a good point, and particularly if we pick on Redken, because we had a delegation a year ago regarding that stretch of road, and while we have others, so that, because it was a good question, Councillor Smith, so that, and good answer, because it doesn't meet the criteria, but that isn't to say that we couldn't bump it up. It doesn't meet the criteria because it's classed as a gravel road right now. So it's 68, but if we wanted to make a change there, go ahead, Rob, yeah.
Yeah, and this goes hand in hand. I'm sure it's going to come up later on, but I'll try and get ahead of it now. We can absolutely dictate what roads get done. We can go through and pick and choose, but we can also exclude roads, which I think is kind of where this is going to. There's a bunch of roads in town that I've identified that are not on sewers. So does it make sense in council's opinion to resurface these roads, knowing potentially, I couldn't tell you right now, potentially within 4 or 5 years, they could be dug up and had sewer lines installed. So we do have that flexibility. As much as, we're telling this program to tell us what to do, we still have to have the human element to it and what makes sense.
Yeah, good point. We were going to bring that up later.
But they kind of go hand in hand.
They do, like you say, we're trying to take the politics out of what roads we do in what year, and we're trying to have a system that is fluid, as opposed to a roads needs study that locked us into 6 years and said on year 5 you shall do this road, when other stuff happened that we can't necessarily predict, or potholes came up that, and in fact, even with the old roads need study, we were still rejigging year over year. So this is a more fluid and flexible system, and we will get to some of these village roads and that. So anyway, go ahead, continue, Councillor Smith.
okay, yeah, thanks very much. So Rob, there are 2 other topics in particular that I wanted to address initially, and one of them is certainly the in-town roads and the question of the sewer, and the other is the what you call the prep work that needs to be done. So maybe I'll cut the prep work first, because it affects so many of the roads. You gave a couple of examples in your response when I asked about Canisius Lake Road, Eddie's Bay down to the dam, and also about Irish Line. And you use Dunn as an example also, where your past practice has been to try and have our own crews do the prep work, the ditching and brushing and so forth that needs to be done before you put a hard top on. And you note that specifically that far end of Canisius Lake Road for 3 years now, you've been trying to get at it, and you hadn't even got it started. Council's also said it wants to get Dunn Drive ditched, and Irish Line is obviously a road that's filled with permanent residents, and it's in pretty bad shape, frankly. And you say it could be a couple of years before you get there. Again, it's a resource issue, and it leads to the question, is had one that you've been trying to do at Canisius Lake Road. You said specifically, I've been trying to get to it for 3 years. I haven't even got it started yet. Should we be looking at, getting some contract resource for the summer of 2021 and sort of catch up on these things, so that you're then in a point where you can, continue to do the work, but not have this huge a backlog that's obviously at least 3 years based on your Canisius Lake Road experience. And so what would be the cost implications of that? And with that contract for a kind of one-time batch of work, would that make sense?
It would. Obviously, it would cost money. It would depend where the road is, the type of terrain, the traffic control required, how long they got to haul to get rid of the stuff. There's all sorts of stuff to take into account. We have contracted out some ditching not that long ago. And it was strictly because it was add-on work by council as part of a budget. We identified we didn't have the resources to get ahead of it. Parsons Road was one, Berry Line was another. We just didn't have the resources to get the work done. So we were given money to contract the work out. Absolutely, it's a consideration. What I will say this year is it always seems to be something in our department. Something always comes up in September, October, November. This year it happened to be Dignan. Dignan got added on late, so there was 2.5 kilometers there that we prepped, which probably could have been done at Kinesis Lake Road had it not been bumped up. So again, it's, we have all sorts of good intentions to get all this work done, but it just boils down to limitations. And in particular, when we're ditching, for example, in 2021, we can do 10 kilometers only because we want the road resurfaced by the middle of September. That's our drop dead date, ideally, in a perfect world. There's nothing to say we couldn't ditch beyond September to November as we could have this year, and we did by and large, to get ready for next year. But this year, when you're only doing 1-year programs, when you don't find out what work you're doing until January or February, it really puts you behind the 8 ball, especially if you have a late winter. If you don't get on the road until the June 1st or the middle of June, at best we have about 14 weeks to get ahead of these guys before the surface goes down. If you have a late winter, it only gets worse from there. But again, it's things we want to get all these roads ditched. We absolutely do. It's to our benefit as well. But part of it is we only have so many people. We do have 2 excavators. We can probably get a couple crews going from time to time throughout the winter. We might be a little light on our 10-kilometer capacity now, only because the landfills have eased up on their requirement for landfill maintenance. But yeah, if we want to go that route, the contractors we have that come in and do surface treatment generally don't do their own ditching. So it would be something either we would have to contract out or they would have to subcontract out. And this would be the time of year to consider it, because the local contractors that are looking for work are doing that just now. They are looking to kind of fill their 2021 slate. And, if we don't decide what roads we're doing until February or March, we might miss the boat on that.
So if I might continue, just to kind of follow up on that, if we were to give you some incremental budget, and just to throw a round number out, like $100,000 seems like a big chunk of money to me. Would $100,000 make a dent in your backlog? Or you only need half that amount, or what sort of ballpark number would we be talking about here to kind of get some of this backlog cleared?
Again, depending on availability and what roads we're looking at, I think it could do a lot of good. Certainly from so we're talking prep work only, not resurfacing at this point. So drainage.
Yeah, like I use Kinesis Lake Road because it was the first one in your example. You said you've been trying to get to it for 3 years, but you haven't got it started yet.
Mm-hmm.
You'll know what condition that's in because you've been looking at it, trying to get there for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a big job? Is it a difficult? It doesn't strike me as a difficult terrain, but I'm not an expert in it.
It's not. It's been going on so long now. It's been brushed once, and it probably has to be brushed again. It goes back to the brushing program. I think it was done 4, maybe 5 years ago, and you wouldn't know it now. So of that $100,000, some of that would have to go towards brushing as well. But absolutely, $100,000. I'd take $100,000 if you're offering it up. So.
Well, sorry to interrupt Councillor Smith, but it is a good point. We're sitting at a 0.22% increase up from a 0% increase, which I think is extremely prudent and reasonable and was expected for a 2021 budget. There's a lot of pressures, for people to pay their property tax and COVID and everything else. We weren't going to come in with a high budget. That being said, this is the opportunity to ask those type of questions. So we're not going to change the road resurfacing amount dollar-wise that we set by resolution and by decision of council to do the 1.5, but perhaps this is the year to do some opportunity to increase the prep work to get ahead of that. Rob, and then Councillor Clark.
Yeah, and just for some background info, when I budget for my prep work, I go in at around just shy of $20,000 a kilometer for our crews to go in there. Again, not knowing what roads are going to be approved. Sometimes it could be 10, it could be 30. We kind of found a happy medium of, just shy of 20 to get the work done. So, you know what, if it's going to be contracted out, there'll be a markup on that for sure. So.
But at the same time, sometimes you have to contract work out to get it done in a timely fashion. It is more expensive, but it might be the little, that's what you have to do. Councillor Clark?
Yeah, just to support what Councillor Smith was saying, I think it's important to support Rob in development of his software and populating the information, manage our road network on a broad range. I guess my question, Rob, is with regard to the brushing. Does that, your management software, does that address some of the issues we've been identifying around things like sight lines, that type of thing? And what I'm going back to is a lot of issues that have been raised over this last 6-8 months around people not feeling safe when they're walking the roads because of, some of the sight lines and the importance of brushing in certain areas. I know some roads do not lend themselves to being properly brushed. You can see that, but those where we can, I think we've got to try and take an initiative. Is there any facility within your asset management software to identify those stretches that require a little bit higher maintenance on the brushing to improve the safety factor of the roads, sightline factor of the roads?
Good question, Councillor. And as you were speaking, I'm just kind of going through. In our level of service, brushing is mentioned in our level of service. So it may be something that council would want to revisit. I'm sure it's in our level of service. Yes. So yeah, in our level of service, which we updated about this time last year to increase the plowing and the snow removal adjacent to accessible parking. So in that document, you'll find there is a topic on brush that basically gives a vertical clearance and a horizontal clearance. Once it hits that threshold, we do have a response time of 1 to 3 years. The way brush has been growing the last few years, we might be a little out of date on that. But the horizontal clearance for, I'm going to say, a Kinesis Lake Road is 4 meters. Well, that 4 meters is measured from center line. So that doesn't get you very far off the road. But that's a level of service that we've adopted. If we want to expand that, we can expand it. But the brushing costs are going to go up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's get yeah, sure, Councillor Smith, just 1 second. Let's just sort of keep that in the back of our minds that we could add additional funds to. Would that be under the we'd call it maintenance budget, because it's not road resurfacing?
It could be a contract service under brushing.
Okay. Councillor McKechnie and then Councillor Smith.
Yeah, I think it'd be great to get these roads brushed and ditched. But the problem we have is, and we've got history of them, they end up growing back in, and the ditches and all the brush, and so we have to do it again. So if we are going to put this money out to hire a special crew, I hope that we can have the crew ready to also, and the money to have them resurfaced in the next few years. Like Rob says, the way brush grows today in the ditches fill in. So I think that's something that we really got to make sure that we, if we're going to spend that money, that it's we have a follow-up plan to get the road finished. Also, I'm glad to see Klondike is going to be addressed. It's been a long time. And also Dunn been mentioned here a few times today. People on Dunn have been, fairly patient. They're starting to run out. This has been going on a long time. Dunn has, and I really hope that can get finished this year. Coming up, the road into our Halliburton landfill site. It's not a big job, I don't think, but I sure had a lot of concerns this fall, and I really hope that we can put a serious day or two up there and fix that entrance into there, because it's not good. That's all. And one last thing in regard to the roads, we're not going to purchase any of those radar traffic count signs where it tells you that you're going 60 kilometers or 80 kilometers. that was brought up, talked about a long time ago, but I think that it's something that, in my own opinion, it's just my opinion, but I really believe that it would help slow people down.
Yeah, there was money set aside. There are 5,000, I believe. But we haven't decided on what type to purchase yet, but there is money in there.
Thank you, Rob.
Rob, did you want to answer any other Councillor McKechnie's questions before Councillor Smith asks a new question?
I guess the one that I'm going to focus on is, and I know Walt, you had brought it up with me before about the West Bay landfill, and absolutely, thanks for the reminder. It actually fell off my plate. But that's a road that, yeah, it does need some work. And if we do have a surface treating crew in there, I would recommend we surface treat that at the same time. You know, it needs some ditching, needs some granular. I don't imagine it's probably been 20 or 30 years since it was surfaced, so it doesn't owe us anything.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so now to Councillor Smith.
Great, thanks. So just to kind of wrap up on that previous point, and it's good to hear there's some support for the concept of getting some contract resource to kind of catch up on some of this ditching work the prerequisite to retreating the surface, whether it's a gravel road or hardtop surface. And your example, Rob, of Kinesis Lake Road is one that's been there for 3 years would be terrific. So I'd like to have us come back at some point, if we might, in that mayor, to kind of reach a conclusion on that. It said that ballpark number of $100,000. But the other concept here, Rob, that you touched on and I had raised in my questions relates to the village roads. I can remember when I was a kid, my dad used to comment, do those folks down at City Hall have any idea what they're doing? They come out and surface the road, and 6 months later, the telephone company or somebody's come out and ripped it up, and and so I couldn't help but be sensitive to the commentary that you had in the report related to a sewer system. We've been casually talking about expanding the sewer system. In fact, the need to expand the sewer system in town, for development purposes, for service purposes, to utilize the sewage system plant that we're paying for, and so until we make a decision, are we going to do that or not going to do that? The ghost of my dad would be saying, my God, don't resurface those roads and then, go out in a year or two and tear them up. I mean, people will think we've got nothing but money. And I'd also say that based on my own travels, it's not like most of those roads in town are in terrible shape. They're, frankly, some of them are in pretty good shape. And so would it make sense to kind of put that on hold, that portion of it on hold, and say, okay, we've got these other roads that council identified, at least we thought were a priority based on traffic volumes. Could we reallocate some of those dollars to those roads and hold off on the village until we really have a firm plan with regard to what we're going to do in the sewer system?
That's great. I want to hear from other councillors. If you don't mind, Rob, before you, because I think we all may be thinking the same thing. Rob brings forward what Dot spits out, but that's why he's put that caveat is, should we even be doing this? Now, do we look at pulling everything from the village out this year, or do we cherry pick because we know the roads within the village to say, like the sewer will likely never go up that road. But anyway, let's hear from the other councillors and then we'll get Rob to chime in. Councillor Wood Roberts.
Just a question. Once you put a sewer line in, do people, I don't know that we can force people to hook on, correct?
That's correct. It's in the bylaw.
Yeah, they don't have to join on. So unless you had a good majority of people, committing to hooking up, could be forever to get enough people.
Well, I think, I don't know if any of us were here that long ago. I don't know, we weren't, when the other sewer, the expansion went in 96, 97. And so what happened with those properties who weren't physically ready to hook in then, they still had to buy in, but I believe they were able to pay over a certain amount of years. So I don't know whether it's through community improvement programs. So they put on their taxes. So eventually everybody, if the sewer line goes in front of your house, you have to pay. Even if you have to pay you have to pay the capital connection, even if you aren't hooked in. So, and you have like 20 years to pay that or something. So, Rob?
Yeah, just to touch on that point, I believe the connections were debentured over 20 years.
Yes.
And so when they put the line in, they ran laterals and stubbed it off at property line. So they didn't have to tear the road up again, obviously, to tie in.
And then as people went along, so they had that opportunity. So you're not forcing them to pay that 4,700 or whatever we're up to now, the capital connection fee immediately, but they would have to pay that over 20 years, or they if they were actually hooking their house in that year, then they would have to pay. Oh, I think they still have the 20-year debenture. Anyway, we can look into that, but the point is, we are looking into that. It is part of our service delivery review, of which we have a meeting to talk about that and to look at ways that we can expand the sewer. So, Rob, in looking at the village roads, are there ones that we can pick and choose, ones where we know, and you don't need to necessarily answer that. I'm not asking you to answer that today, but, or do we take everything from the village out for 2021 and put it on pause?
In all honesty, in my opinion, and my opinion only, until I see something on paper that says something will be getting in line or not, I say you defer the whole thing. You just maintain it.
Yeah. What do other councillors think about that? Just pulling the village roads this for 2021, which I don't think, unless, we're still patching, we're still fixing potholes, and we'll still fix potholes up Halbium, I know, because there's one that comes up that hill every year. But we really should have a full investigation into this. Councillor Clark?
Yeah, I think we do need a long-term strategy on the expansion of the sewer system, and respect to Councillor Woods Roberts, it's not fair for people who've got a septic system to have to immediately sign up. But in 10 years' time or 15 years' time, when that system comes due to be replaced, it would be best that they hook into a proper sewer system as opposed to putting in another septic system. So it's long-term planning that we're talking about here, and I think perhaps with the strategic plan that we're talking about going into this year, we make that a priority in terms of the infrastructure expansion for the village, and again that comes back to the points on what roads we redo, and you've got a timeline to know if a road's upgrade or paving is going to have to last 5 years or 10 years, wherever. So this makes sense for some proper planning.
Yeah, go ahead, Rob.
Well, and to take this one step further, because we're talking strictly sewers at this point, but I'm thinking Grass Lake Road in my mind. Are we going to consider putting sidewalk down there? It's between a hospital and 2 schools. There's 24 houses right there. So just to take it one step further, we really need, and maybe the strategic plan will address this. But to me, to resurface these roads and in 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 years, go and tear it up and add to it, it doesn't make any sense to me.
No, I think we're seeing lots of nodding heads and some consensus. So what I'd like to ask you for our council meeting, because we're not going to wait to bring this back just to the next February budget meeting. We're hoping to have a report at the end of January for our Dysart council meeting that we can actually approve the capital portion so that Rob can go ahead and start tendering out. If we pull all the village roads out, could you bring us back some options of what roads you would recommend to bring ahead, including some of the ones where we have to bring back to a level of service of a surface treatment? Some of the gravel roads back is so this is option A, this is option B, keeping in that we set that target of 1.5. So we're not changing the dollar amount, and Rob can come back with some pull the village roads and what options do we have. Is that a good go forward, Councillor Smith?
Just one clarification. Can we say, yeah, with the 1.5 for resurfacing, but keeping in mind, there's still the $100,000 opportunity to do the catch-up work on.
Yes, I was going to
ditching and
put that
brushing.
as a second, as a second question for later, but in terms of just this, the capital road resurfacing portion of it only, I was just going to talk about that and then discuss the additional funds. Councillor Wood Roberts and then Councillor McKechnie.
Are we talking like within the village limits roads? I mean, there's some like Ridgeview that are scheduled that there's no way we're gonna run a sewer line to Ridgeview Road.
Well, that's what I was asking. Do we pull everything that says village area, or do we pull only the ones that we know would potentially be near enough to sewer? Like Ridgeview Road is awfully far.
I would just wonder if I could sit down with Rob and we could pick a lot out of there that we could defer, but not all of them within the next couple days.
Yeah, you're the Ward 1 councillor. That's is everybody okay with that? Because anyone in the report that we're looking at, anyone that says on the comment column, village area, no sewers, some of them we know darn well will, even if we do a sewer expansion, we'll likely never get a sewer just because they're in the village area. So is everyone okay if Councillor Wood Roberts and Rob work together? There may be a couple in there that would stay in for resurfacing for 2021. And then Rob could bring back some options of how to pull what roads that he would recommend using the software, not just the complaints, and not what, you know, using the criteria that we've established, also knowing that it is a priority to return some level of service to roads with high traffic count that are gravel and bring them back to a surface treatment. Rob?
So I guess for clarification, these roads that were previously pulverized or previously hardtop, they've been pulverized, they are now gravel. Are we looking strictly at the roads that meet the criteria through our 7 gravel road classes now, or all of the ones that used to be surface treated at one point? Are we trying to bring everything back up to surface?
No, I'm pretty sure, and I'll look for show of hands, that it's to do with traffic counts. It's where we have the high traffic count that we feel that it's more value to have a surface treated road. So it wouldn't be every level of road.
Okay.
There are roads with 50 and under, and whatever the amount that we set, and pardon me, I can't remember that report, but no, they would stay the same.
Okay.
Councillor Smith, what?
Yeah, I think, well, in fact, I'm pretty sure that our discussion was, and it was your recommendation, Rob, that roads that had an average daily traffic count of 100 or more should be hardtop. And some of those, by coincidence, happen to be roads that used to be hardtop and were converted to gravel. And so, you know, council's direction, and Deputy Mayor Kennedy, who's not here, was also a proponent of this. That yeah, those are the roads we want to get brought back. You know, Kinesis Lake Road would be an example, but it needs significant prep work first. Mm-hmm. You know, Bitter Lake Road is another example. Redken, you know, that far stretch of Redken probably doesn't need as much prep work. But, you know, but again, it may be not on the list because it's in pretty good shape according to your PCI index.
Rob, go ahead.
Yeah, and Jeff, I'm looking at the list, the same list you're looking at. So in the comments in 2021, you'll see there's a road called Canyon Road that says it was previously surface treated. It's adjacent to Dignan. So it's in the program for 2021, and it's going to receive 2 inches of gravel because it has low traffic count. To complicate things further, you go down 2 lines, there's a road called Bernie's Road. So that's up around Percy Lake. It's only 80 meters long. The traffic count on it, I don't have in front of me, but it's probably 10 or less. It's going to get full depth reclamation and surface treatment because it was surface treated. So I just want council to be aware that, you know, there's some roads that were surface treated that were turned back to gravel that will not go back to a surface treated state. but we still have roads with very low traffic counts that are surface treated, that based on our level of service will remain surface treated. I just want to throw that out for information and
Just to confuse us.
not confuse it any further, but it's out there.
Councillor McKechnie?
Yes, as we're all aware, and I've been up here a long time, and I sure don't know a lot about roads, but in the last 10 years, I sure heck have learned a lot. And it's a very big issue. It's a huge issue, our infrastructure. And needless to say, this statement's been beat up. The roads were never built to have the traffic that they're having on them, but they do. So the point I want to make here is it's great. And I wish we could just, like any of our constituents are listening to this today, going to go away saying, boy, in a couple of years, all our roads are going to be back to the way that they were. And I think that would be our immediate goal. We'd love to. But there's a few factors up here in our municipality, in the county, is of course the time frame, like Rob says. There's just not a lot of time to get this work done, and two, not enough men. It would be great to have our own private brushing and ditching crew. It'd be great to have another Miller's payment on the payroll, because that's the only way you're going to get caught up and get ahead of this, because it's such a big monster, and every year it grows more heads. So I don't know whether I'm making myself clear here, but I think it's great that we're talking about it, and we're always talking about plans. And this is something that, that we've talked about for years and years and years. But I mean, there's only so many dollars, so much time. Miller can only pave so many, resurface so many roads. And I think that's got to be another topic of sitting down and discussing a real serious plan that maybe the next council would be able to carry on, because it's great that we're talking about it, but it's money and time. Thank you.
Yeah, good point. I think the thing to remember with roads is it's a forever cycle. It is not something that you just fix once and it stays. There's weather factors and all kinds of other conditions that affect the roads. So we set that level of service, we do the traffic counts, which we invested in this year, and and we make decisions, and council next year and the year after and beyond and beyond. Well, this is just it's a continuous cycle, and I think we're well on the way to managing our road network. That's what it's all about, is managing it. It's not ever going to be 100. We set that level at 65. So that's an important thing to remember, is it doesn't ever get to 100. Go ahead, Rob.
No, and just to reiterate, is we can change this at any time. If we go through this year and the two roads I just spoke about, if we have second thoughts or you want to change something, we can change it. So that's what a level of service is there for, is to adapt. So
I think today for this section, what we just to sort of summarize is that you and Councillor Wood Roberts are going to review the village area roads, what to pull and what to leave in. You're going to come back to the next council meeting, or our council meeting, with some options keeping within that dollar time frame. And so it's not just there will be some more discussion at the council meeting, and then we're able to see what roads we can pull ahead, so to speak, whether they be gravel to resurface or other roads that are higher up in the priority. But using that software, is that to summarize? Because I do have a resolution on that, and then we'll discuss other things under transportation, such as Councillor Smith's proposal, the AVL, all of that stuff. But I think we're pretty much summarized for this, the capital work, and Rob will be bringing information back to our council meeting. It'd be ideal. He can go out to tender in February. That'd be awesome. Councillor Clark, anything to add to that?
Well, we're going to deal with environment, aren't we? This is just.
Oh yeah, no, I'm just dealing with this one portion, which is the capital road resurfacing, and we're going to talk about lots of other things, transportation wise still as well. So I actually have a resolution on that, which not sure if it was included in the package. It was, so that you can read that. So it basically says exactly what I direction on that staff returns to the next council meeting held on January 26th. So do I have a mover and seconder for that? Councillor McKechnie and Councillor Clark. Be it resolved that council acknowledge and receive this report on the 2021-2022 proposed capital road resurfacing draft as information, and the council directs staff to return to the next regular council meeting being held on January 26, 2021 with an updated proposed capital road resurfacing list based on council discussions and direction as a result of this report. All in favor? Okay, so that carries. It'll also alter, we never even got to 2022. So we were looking at 2021, but we're gonna have a fulsome report that will show both years. It would be really nice to see how things shift and change for 2022 as well. And that will help, I think, our roads department get ahead of into the following year. Okay, so how about Councillor Smith's proposal of adding, Councillor Smith, you said anywhere between 50 and 100. I'm wondering if we could, I think there was general consensus that we could add some to the budget because we have a lot of other things that were not included at that 0.22%, such as grants and other items for consideration. Maybe we can hold that. I've got a note and we can talk about it later in the day and see where we end up. For instance, if we say, oh, we all agree at 100, but then we start adding more money later, it may change that conversation. So I think if that's okay, we will just hold off to if or then how much money we add to a maintenance budget for prep work for roads till a little bit later. AVL, do you want to go on? Was there any questions about that? And also, I'd have to go back to the slide presentation. The speed study. Does anyone want to talk about the decision to do AVL not in one lump sum, but to do it on a per vehicle basis as we replaced our fleet? Everyone's okay with that? Excellent. So do you want to talk about the a speed study?
Oh yeah, the speed limit survey. So at the October meeting, I believe, November, during one of our discussions on speed and perceived speeding, I'd asked permission to engage a traffic engineer to get a price to assess our entire network. And so we did a bit of back and forth, and they did get back to me, and it came back around $47,000 to assess our whole network based on recommendations in the Transportation Association of Canada guidelines. So what that would do is every road section, even the ones we talked about, the Bernie's roads, the Winklers, everything's going to be assessed. And that's to give us guidance moving forward to deal with the concerns of ratepayers on vehicles speeding and what signage is appropriate for all of this. So the only concern I have, and it's a mild concern at this point, is if we move ahead with this and we get the study and it says every road should be posted at 50, 60, 40, whatever it may be, council's still going to get pressure to lower speed limits on these roads. So we really have to ask ourselves, if we go ahead with this, are we going to go through with the recommendations? Because to me, it doesn't make sense to spend $40,000 or $50,000 to go and assess all these roads and then take each concern on a case-by-case basis and react individually to each road as opposed to looking at the whole network. Just not sure where everybody's head's at when it comes to this.
Yep, good. And I think it's good for conversation is, while the amount came in as quite reasonable, all things considered, we have a large municipality, there's a lot of area to cover. $47,000 is still a lot of money that could go towards brushing and ditching. So, you know, we have to see what the benefit and the trade-off, and a very good point is, so we get this speed limit review and then we're going to just put it on Rob's shelf. You know, so what do people think about spending the money to do a speed limit review, or should we reallocate that? Councillor Clark, Councillor Donaldson, second.
Yeah.
Councillor Smith.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, Rob has identified the need equipment to measure, you know, speeds and to identify people that are going. Rob, I take it that equipment will also collect data, you know, on, let's say on you know, so one on a road, will it collect, you know, the amount of traffic and the speed of the traffic?
We would provide that information already. We have most of that data already.
Okay.
This is by and large a dashboard assessment by engineers that come up and do this. So I'm just looking at the proposal there. So they carry out field reviews, which is the geometry of the road, roadside hazards. They also take into account pavement condition, pedestrian and cyclist exposure, number of entrances, intersections, parking, all sorts of things they look at. What may be required as a result of this is we may actually have to go out and survey some corners and, you know, get some better information on it. So this by and large is a couple of people coming up and driving every road and taking notes and doing what they do. Where we take it from there is up to us, but they will make recommendations on what they see.
Now, do you feel there's value add by like this is all data that helps us in terms of managing our roads? We've got a couple of unknowns, but with the amount of growth that's happening here and you know, a lot of lakeside roads becoming year round and you know, that's going to impact a lot of it as well. But do you feel there's, you know, the data is going to have value? It's long-term data, I would hope. And I guess the other option we've got is do part of it this year and part of it the following year, you know, kind of build it out rather than this one big dollar figure over 1 year.
Well, I think if you're going to do it, I think you do it all at once.
Okay.
It lets you know where you stand, quite honestly. I keep going back to the Kinesis Lake Road and the Watts Road intersection. These guys may come up and they may identify some things that we haven't seen, certainly on the remainders of those roads. But what that could do is that could trigger, instead of resurfacing, maybe that triggers reconstruction in some spots. You know, there's a couple boat launches up there that, you know, aren't real friendly. So maybe instead of resurfacing the road, we spend some money and blast the hill down. Maybe we widen it out. You know, it's all good information to have, but we have to be prepared to act on it and, you know, follow through on it.
Mm-hmm. Councillor Donaldson, and then Councillor Smith, then Councillor McKechnie.
I just wanted my thoughts on it. First of all, I think that how much it was, $47,000 would do a lot of ditching and brushing. And why can't it be a case-to-case basis that we have the engineer come in? Like you have a list, you obviously would have a list right now of like that last spot you just mentioned. So that's on the list and there must be several others. Why can't you get the engineers to come up and specifically target the areas we already know are a problem and that you want their professional opinion on whether it does need different construction before you do resurfacing, rather than them go through all of the roads that nobody has complaints on?
Well, now that it's out there, I fully expect to get more complaints on speeding and terrain and brushing and alignment. You know, to be fair, we've moved away from case by case basis and we're looking at network priorities and, you know, network conditions. The whole network should be treated equally. We've had this conversation before, whether a road has a count of 0 or 900, at the end of the day, it's still a public highway and we should be maintaining it as such. So if we go through and if 75% of these roads are fine the way they are and they don't require any further investigation, then so be it. We've checked that box and we can move on. So when we get asked down the road, we can say that we've looked into it.
Yep. Councillor Smith, then Councillor McKechnie.
Thanks. You know, I do think that Councillor Donaldson makes a fair point. Some of the roads, is this an assessment, Rob, of all 310 kilometers of roads that Dysart was before?
Yes.
Because in fairness, you'd have to say some of them You mentioned Winkler by name. I know it well. There's no need for anybody to survey Winkler in terms of speed limits. It's just not enough. West Shore deserves study, but a little side street like Winkler, I wouldn't pay somebody to drive down there and tell me anything about it. But I'm interested in the other scope of this study. You mentioned the Canisius Watts intersection. So they wouldn't just be looking at the speed limit. They would be looking more broadly at safety considerations. You also mentioned pedestrian traffic. So, much of Canisius Lake Road or Watts Road, where there's no, shoulder for a pedestrian to walk on. Therefore, pedestrians are walking on the road, and it's a high traffic road, lots of curves and hills, and frankly, it's dangerous. They would be considering that a broader scope, not just how to move traffic, but they'd be looking at pedestrian safety and then the nature of what's there. Is that part of their scope?
Yes, and say when you look at speed limits, you have to look at everything, right? You have to look at the user groups, who's using it. Terrain is one thing, alignment is another thing, driver behavior. But just to go back a step, when you talked about Winkler in particular, that wouldn't need any assessment. Ordinarily, I would agree with you, except that I have had a similar experience here in town where the road was not very long. It was all local. They were looking for children playing signs and speed signs because people are going too fast. And my question was, well, who's speeding? Because the road doesn't go anywhere. So it's your neighbors that are speeding, and it's your neighbors whose kids are playing on the highway. So, yeah. So I think if we nip everything off, we can say we've looked at absolutely everything. We've exhausted all avenues.
Well, I guess the good news is to just use the Winkler example again. They couldn't be charging much to give an assessment of a little stretch of 200 meters of road. So
they're going by it anyways. But
a good example, and then I'll turn it over to Councillor McKechnie, is on Haliburton Lake Road, when we were asked for some speeding signs. There's a long section where there isn't anything, and then there's another section after North Curry where there are lots of cottages, and in fact, one's on the opposite side of the road as well. So you've got some are backlots and some have docks on the other side, but so all of a sudden that area becomes a lot busier. So do you do section by section? It is 47,000. It is something that we had been requesting. It's Rob puts these things in because we ask for them. So it's not that he's recommending it necessarily. We ask, what would it cost to do this? Now it's a decision is, do we do this? And if we do it, make sure that we follow through with some of the recommendations. So Councillor McKechnie.
So if I could just comment then.
Sure.
So I'd say I support making this assessment. It is something that is frankly responsive to the requests. I mean, it seems like every council meeting, there's a letter or two or three from some neighborhood. There's certainly phone calls from people who don't send in letters, concerned about speed of traffic on their road. And again, just like the road study, getting a professional assessment is moving it from the counselor that knows how to file the complaint to, no, there's some scientific, evidence that supports the action that we've taken or not taken on any particular road. So, and although I agree with Councillor Donaldson that it seems ridiculous to do some of the roads, frankly, we're going to have to do most of them. And therefore, how much do you save by knocking Winkler off the list? Well, the $27 that it will cost to do Winkler is just not worth trying to save, because we might actually learn something we didn't know. So I'd be very supportive of this.
Okay, so keep it in. Councillor McKechnie.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not supportive of it because I don't think we need people coming up. This is municipality of Dysart. We know where our problem areas, and every councillor knows their roads. Our roads department, our director of public works, our roads managers, they know the problems. I mean, for $50,000 is a lot of money today. I think the money could go into brushing and ditching, which would make the roads much safer. Maybe even some more, buy a whole bunch more of those radar signs. I guess I'm the only person who honestly believes that they work, because every time I go by Tim Hortons, I know I'm speeding and I slow down. And it gets my attention real quick. So I don't know. I think just giving another $50,000 to some Toronto guys going to come up here and give you this big report, which they give every municipality the same report. And I just think that we've got $50,000 we could spend in a lot better way. Buy some more radar signs, please.
Okay. Councillor Clark or Councillor Wood Roberts, the other thing is we don't have to make that decision today. We can keep it in and see where we end up at the end of the day for a final amount and keep it in and keep that as an asterisk that it is something that could be removed. Rob, but I want to hear from Councillor Clark and Councillor Wood Roberts after Rob.
Oh, sorry.
Oops. Go ahead,
Rob first, and then I'll hear from the councillors.
Yeah, just to touch base on the radar signs for Councillor McKechnie. I should be upfront here. The reason I asked for one is because that's what I think we can use. Anything more than one, you have to hire somebody to go and move it and do the data and that kind of thing. There's mixed reactions to those radar signs. My concern with the radar signs is I know there was one in use at the county that I believe went missing. Somebody took it upon themselves to require it more than the county. Putting it on some of these roads in the middle of nowhere, maybe that's the pessimist in me. I expect it would go missing quite often. So there's a reason I asked for one is because I think that's what we can manage, and we got to be really careful where we put it, in all honesty.
Good point. But they're very controversial even at the county. We go round in circles at the county council table as to are they effective and why are we monitoring speed? What are we doing? What are we doing with that data? Are we then sending it to the OPP and saying, this is a posted 50-kilometer zone and here's the data. Could you please do some radar or some ticketing or that type of thing? So we go around in circles at the county table about why we have them, and yes, they were stolen. So just to keep moving forward, Councillor Clark, what do you think?
Well, I was thinking the same as Councillor McKechnie a couple of minutes ago when I thought that perhaps maybe the speed signs could do the data collection that we're looking for, but based on Rob's response to my question, it became very apparent that there's a lot more information on our roads that would come from a proper engineer study. And our roads up through here are complicated, between, the type of dirt we're on, sight lines and how they're used. The more information we've got, the better we're able to manage and maintain our road system. I think it'd be kind of, it's more penny wise and pound foolish not to do some proper analysis and data collection on our road networks. But it doesn't necessarily have to be this year. Let's say, fine, if we've got, if brushing is a bigger priority at this point in time, then maybe we do the brushing this year and then put the survey up to the following year. But as Rob has identified, it's best to do it all in 1 year so you can bring guys back and forth and paying a premium on that.
Okay. Rob, go ahead, and then Nancy after.
Yeah, and one thing that I don't know how much, we've had so many discussions on speed limits and that kind of thing. The biggest thing with speed limits is they have to be reasonable. We can go on any road. You could post County Road 21 at 50 if you wanted, but realistically, people are not going to drive 50 on that road. So I guess what I'm getting at is if we do this study, they're going to come up with what a reasonable speed limit should be. And if we don't want to go ahead with it, then, we could always sink that money into some paid duty OPP. And if we know where we're getting the complaints, you want to go up and, you're going to Kinesis Lake Road these 2 days and nail everybody. Because basically it comes down to enforcement. People are going to drive at what they're comfortable at driving at. So for us to put a sign up to tell them to drive slower, it doesn't work. So if we're putting up unreasonable speed zones and speed limits, then absolutely we're going to find people going against that and people breaking the law, and it comes down to enforcement. So that's the other avenue we have.
Yeah. So there's two sides. I'll hear from Councillor Wood Roberts what your thoughts are, and then we'll move on from this subject for now. Councillor Wood Roberts.
I kind of agree with Tammy. For $47,000, we can do a lot of other things. And unless, if we get this assessment done, then we have to really be prepared, like Rob said, to follow through with it. And that could be exorbitantly expensive. Rob?
Yeah, and if we don't want to move ahead with it, that's fine. But the problem's not going away, and we're going to get the same requests from the same roads. So we better have a policy on it soon.
So what I'm thinking, you know, and like one hand, so there's really evenly split in terms of to keep it in, not to keep it in. On one hand, it's another tool in the tool chest that we would have. And so why don't we put an asterisk on that as to, so we don't need to decide that right now. I think we need to see where we end up at the end of the day, and then we can come back to that one, whether we want to keep it in or keep it out. There's benefits, but pros and cons on both sides. I'm just going to put a little note to come back to that if we can. Is there anything else in transportation? And then if not, we'll, okay, Councillor Smith, and then we'll do environment. I'd like to take a break in about, 15, 20 minutes, something like that. So, Councillor Smith?
Just the other line item there was the network traffic count, $10,000.
Oh.
Again, we had provided funding this year for a traffic count. We have done the whole municipality, didn't get to Ward 1. You're going to do that next year. What's this $10,000 for?
That would be the carryover from Ward 1. So basically my intent there, and I should have mentioned that, my intent there would be to roll that traffic count in with this speed limit survey, because it is data they would be using, and I don't want them to come in May and file a report in June and then us count in October. So basically I didn't want to hold them up. So I think it was close to a $9,000 rollover for Ward 1. So I threw $10,000 at it to include it as part of the speed limit survey.
Okay. So do we need a traffic count for Ward 1? Given the other question about how we're going to proceed with roads there?
Yes.
Still need it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I'd asked Rob that question actually yesterday, so I knew that it was, I want to make sure we didn't actually pay for it in 2020, and now we're paying for it again, but we only paid for what we got in 2020, and so this is like a carryover. So I think, like I say, I've got asterisks on those couple of that one particular item, and then maybe we'll move into, there was a question from Councillor Clark in terms of the environment section.
Yes, thank you, Madam. We're looking at a lot of change with regard to our waste disposal sites, the need for recycling. And to me, that indicates we've got a huge responsibility around both informing and educating our ratepayers. Perhaps where I'm a little concerned is this doesn't just touch on environment, it also touches on building and it touches on planning. Not only have we got information, we got a need to be informing and educating our constituents on the proper recycling and the change that we're trying to do there to manage our dumps, but also with regard to things such as shoreline, with regard to septic. My concern is we can't just be pushing out changes on this stuff without taking without going to the effort of advising people why this is important, why it's in their interest to do this stuff on a long-term basis. People are pushing back nowadays. If they don't understand why a change is happening, they're going to fight you, and rightly so. So what I'm proposing is that social media and other means that we've used through our website is not necessarily doing the job. I'm getting push from people who used to see the hello.
Oh, okay, we can hear you.
Oh, okay, thanks. I've got
no, we're all, maybe we look like frozen, but we're just listening.
Okay, thanks, Andrea. Anyways, my concern is at one time Dysart used to do an information circular with its tax bill distribution, and the point has been raised with me a couple of times that hasn't been seen in a couple of years. So I sent a note off to Tamara. She advised that to do a little insert. And that we can change it from time to time, some dealing with environment, some dealing with bylaw or short-term rentals or whatever, is about $16,000. And I don't know if that's for the year tomorrow or if that's for just an individual mail drop. but that includes the the stuffing and the mailing of information. That way we can connect and communicate with our seasonal people and also seniors who such as myself don't do social media, and it's a way of us of communicating and driving and educating and informing our constituents. Thank you.
Okay, Tamara?
No, I was just going to agree. I don't have an exact figure because it's been, like Larry said, it's been several years since we've done an actual print newsletter, probably close to 7 or 8. So those costs would include the printing at the printers, stuffing the envelopes with the tax bills, extra postage, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's just something for council to consider. We'd have to get more accurate costing if you wanted to go ahead with it.
Yeah, so the, and Barbara can answer this. So the interim tax bill will be going out shortly. So that's always based on the last year's assessment for the installments that are March, April. And then we finalize, and then the actual final tax bill goes out for the July, September payments somewhere around May, 1st of May. Barbara?
Yeah, so final tax bills typically go out mid to the end of May. If you are looking at an insert with the final tax bill, we will need something, a final draft of the document by the end of March, because there's a little bit of lead time we have to give to our printers and get that up and running. The other piece is if you are looking at an insert, if you can maybe keep it to 1 page, and that way there we can contain the cost of postage.
So what she's saying, so if it is, if we're only doing one piece of paper, and we could have it, obviously double-sided, 1 piece of paper like that, it doesn't change the weight. The second you get into a more of a any kind of glossier, heavier material, which we had done in the past, but it's actually something really good to consider, not just for environment, the old where do my taxes go? We could do a pie chart, we could do a little bit of a did you know, any kind of updates with Dysart. I think it's a really good idea to include something in our final tax bill that wouldn't change the postage. It would simply be the printing and the creation of what we want on that single sheet of paper. So
We can coordinate that if that's council's way.
and we will have finalized our not only the budget, but also, we'll be well on our way for some other things to do. And I agree, Larry, not everybody is on social media, even it's just exhausting to feel that that's where you always have to get your news. So I think it's timely to put something out in the tax bill that wouldn't increase the postage. So it's only the piece of paper, and then obviously staff time and what do we want on that insert. Good point, good idea. Anything else in environment? I think that budget was just the only thing in today's slide deck was the reclassification. Rob?
Sorry, I want to go back to transportation for a second, if I could.
Really? Okay.
I think it's an easy one. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I was just going back through my notes and I had it written down, but I didn't have a check mark or an X beside it. The additional dot software modules that Barbara had spoken about. I was just wondering if council had any objection to that up front, or if we wanted to talk about it some more. And the only reason I ask is I would really like to move ahead with that ASAP, because this is the time of year I can actually work on it. So if I lose another month, I may not get that project finished till this time next year. So I'm just wondering what the will of council is. Can I get a PO off for that today?
So let's ask, is there any objection to that? Seeing none, the answer is yes, you can place an order.
Thank you.
I'm glad you brought that up. You asked me that before the meeting, like an hour and a half ago, and I forgot already. There you go. Okay, well, I think this is probably a good time for a 15-minute break, or which 10, I don't know, how long do we need? Just 10 minutes, keep rolling through. I've got 10:38 on my thing there. So how about at 10:50, we'll reconvene at 10:50. Okay. So we are in recess. Okay, so we're back after our recess and back in session. So Barbara, I'm wondering if the next thing, we've got a couple things to go through. One that were items for consideration and one were the grants that were not included in the budget. Is there a preference that you have for how you'd like to proceed?
Well, we can start off with the grants,
Okay.
just referring back to the slide deck. And so the first request from the Rails and Gallery. So right now we have $50,000 in the current budget, and they're looking for an additional $6,250, mainly to cover the operating costs for heat and hydro.
So just for clarification, and then yes, I want to hear from you, Councillor Clark, as our rep on the Rails end. In her request, was she requesting that on an ongoing year-over-year basis, or just for the 2021 budget because due to COVID and their fundraising? So, okay, maybe Councillor Clark, you can answer that question.
Yeah, I think that's the bigger question, Madam Mayor. There was no revenue this year because of or very limited revenue this year because they could not do the events, which are their main fundraising. So they're stretched. It would be my expectation that once we can get back to business as usual, the revenue streams will be there, and think business is normal. That may not be necessary, but I think we have to cut them some. We have to provide some support during this period, because really it's a municipal building that they're maintaining. It's old, expenses to it, and yeah.
So it would be for the 2021 budget only.
I would expect that that's the situation. If there's requirement for a difference or additional top up going forward, that would be a different business case. They'd have to bring that forward.
Yes. Okay. And Barbara, was that your understanding that the request for 2021?
Yes.
Okay, just I wanted that clarified. So is there support to include that? Do we give it as an additional on top of the grant and let them pay their own bills? It's a lot of work to transfer over the bills. They're receiving them right now. For paperwork's sake, it would be easier to just include it in the grant or additional funds.
Yeah, it's my recommendation. We just include it as a grant and let them administrate it.
Yes. Okay, so is there support to include, to change the amount, to exclude? Councillor McKechnie?
I support that we give them the money, like Barbara said there.
Okay. Councillor Clark is nodding. Councillor Wood Roberts, you're okay with 6250? Councillor Donaldson, Councillor Smith?
Okay.
Yes.
So we're going to go through a series of these, and I know each is a good cause on its own. This one we're putting the limitation around it that it's for a single year only. But I went back and looked at our audited financial statements, and the recreation and culture budget, which this would come out of, or certainly be related to, has grown by 19% from 2015 to 2019. Audited financial statements for 2020 yet, but that's grown by 19% over that period from 2015 to 2019. The transportation budget during that same period has risen by 6.6%. Because of a lack of grants, particularly with the previous provincial government, taxes are, as Barbara's presentation shown, covering an increasing portion of our budget year after year. And during that same period, 2015 to 2019, taxes had gone up by 43%. And, I don't have an objection to providing some support for recreation and culture activities in our community. But at 19%, in terms of that 4-year period, it's an increasing proportion of our budget. And so my own belief is that we need to make some choices at times. And sometimes, okay, well, great. If the Rails End Gallery is a top priority, what's a lower priority in the area of recreation and culture that we're cutting back? And the same theme is going to apply to each of the other requests that fall into the same category. So I make that point. The Rails End Gallery gets $50,000 a year in cash from us. They get a building for nothing. We're spending $30,000 in our 2021 budget on a new roof for that building in terms of a budgeted line item. That's a lot of support from taxpayers to a single organization. And so from my perspective, the council feels so strongly about the need to support the Rails End Gallery, which obviously isn't able to get support from other groups. What are we going to stop? What are we going to contribute a little less to? Because taxpayers, not all taxpayers think that these organizations are deserving of increases year after year.
So perhaps, Barbara, you can, I'm going to hesitate to guess that the increase is probably due to a staffing increase in that year, but I could be wrong. I don't know without analyzing that myself. Barbara, do you want to comment to the increase?
Well, I'm just going to comment in general. First of all, percentages can be very ambiguous. You've got to compare apples to apples here. The other piece is looking at recreation. You may have a significant project in a year, a capital project that can add to the percentage of the expense for that particular year. So without doing an extensive deeper dive, to support those percentages, I mean, percentages can be very ambiguous. If you've got the transportation budget is $4.5 million. The recreation budget it's 1.3, 1.4 million. There could be a notable capital project in any given year, which could really, skew those percentages.
Okay, Councillor McKechnie?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an artsy guy or whatever, but I sure know how important the Rails End Gallery and all the work they do and all the events they run, how important it is to the Main Street of Haliburton, to the economy of Haliburton. And I can't believe that, if that 6,200 with what's gone on this year was a zero behind it, then I'd be really concerned, but it's $6,200. And I mean, you start talking about, well, these people don't really go to the trash in the park or the whatever it's called, but I go to this. I mean, what are we doing here? Come on, this is a big part of our community, and it's got to keep going because behind the scenes, the amount of economy, the amount of money that's brought into this community is huge. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKechnie. I think, Barbara, you bring up some really good points that, numbers we don't have those. I didn't analyze our audited statements before, but they can be really skewed by percentages when they're small budgets. So numbers are numbers. And one thing, since I've been on council, so 14 years now, the Rails End Gallery grant has been $50,000. So you could actually say that that's been a decrease if inflation has increased year over year. We have not, we've never increased it. It's been the same. There was 1 year, a couple of years ago, where there was a slight increase for a specific project that they did. I believe a couple $1,000 we did. So it's been pretty flat. There's other municipalities that fully run their arts centers, if you will, where the employees are under their employee. The buildings are fully functioning. They don't have a separate board of directors. So I have always thought Rails End was good value. They manage their money well. They're great at fundraising. This has been a horrific year and will continue in 2021 for difficulties. So Councillor Clark?
Yeah, it's not fair to describe the Rails and Gallery as strictly a cultural entity. It's a major part of our economy. We haven't got manufacturing, but what we do is attract a lot of people who come up here because they enjoy their cottage properties. They want to be able to do stuff. And not only that, but also seniors. The seniors programming that's done through the Rails and Gallery is phenomenal. Everything from knitting to ukulele to whatever. It's a big part of the culture in this community, why people want to be in this community. It's a big part about how we're using our park assets. It drives, what about 4 or 5 different events over the course of the summer. It's very inexpensive, and it ties in with the cultural and recreation programs that we do through that we run through our township. It's an extension of that in terms of what it's doing for the seniors in certain parts of our group. So it's not fair to define them just strictly as a cultural overhead that only a few people participate in, because it's not. It's a major part of our community, and it's a major part of why people want to be part of our community and recognize the arts and our growing arts recognition. We're becoming the jazz, the Banff or whatever of Eastern Canada, and ties in with the supporting the local artists that are part and parcel of Fleming College. It's a big part of who we are. So it's you just can't put a dollar and cents figure on the thing and say that that it's not appropriate for our community.
Well, we did put a dollar and cents figure on the propane and hydro, and I think I saw a general consensus that we include $6,250 for 2021 budget only to offset their propane and hydro costs. So that's the first request where there was support. The next one is from Halliburton Lake Cottage Association. Just for clarification, Barbara, on that one, there was $1,600 already allocated. That's pretty much year over year that we put in our budget for the Halliburton Lake Cottage Association, which has one of the nicest public beaches in Dysart. It's just a fabulous place to go with your family and access the water for sure. So their request this year was for an additional $2,500 in total, $1,500 for some shoreline work. They are still getting an awful lot of geese coming up onto the there, and also an additional $1,000 for beach maintenance. So, or was shoreline was for a student? So I'll get you to speak to that, Barbara, and then maybe Councillor McKechnie might want to speak to that request.
So the $1,000 was to help hire a student to complete the beach maintenance at the Halliburton Lake.
And the $1,500 for the shoreline?
The shoreline vegetation, they're looking at improving the vegetation in the beach area.
Okay, so it's an additional $2,500, which has not been included. Walt, do you want to speak to that? Councillor McKechnie?
Yeah, I definitely approve of it. That beach, as we all know, if anybody's been up there, it's really a very popular beach. It's probably one of the most popular beaches in our in the municipality, in the county. And also the $1,500 is to try to deter the geese from coming up there. And I think they've got a plan in place. They've been doing their homework, and they got some people helping them, advising them. And so they're going to plant some shrubs or some trees or whatever they have to do. And then the $1,000 for this year, the maintenance of keeping the beach up with the geese droppings. So.
Okay, so again, this is an additional request of $2,500 for the 2021 budget only. This is not ongoing. This is some additional work. Once the shoreline vegetation is planted, that would not come back for next year. So it's a 1-year request for additional $2,500. Is there support for that? So there is from Councillor McKechnie. Councillor Donaldson? Yes. Councillor Smith? Yes. Councillor Clark? Councillor Wood Roberts? Unanimous. So that stays, that adds to the budget. Barbara?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. No, it's a gem of a beach. It really is. So then we have the request from Halliburton Sculpture Forest, of which we, in our agenda, there was a letter from the Sculpture Forest with a total of in-kind contributions. So you may want to take your agendas and just refresh yourself with that letter. They came as a delegation to our last council meeting requesting a grant of 12,500. Their grant was a little more complicated because it was asking year over year. It was not just for the 2021 budget. So I imagine that there's going to be some more discussion over that. You can see from their letter that they do an awful lot and have an awful lot of in-kind monies that are, they put dollar values beside the in-kind contributions. So we'll open it up to the floor for questions of the request. Does anyone want to support it? Does anyone want to deny it? Does anyone want to compromise? Does it need to be year over year? Councillor Clark?
Yeah, I would move to support this. It's it is a very unique feature, and when I guess it was at the Minister of Culture and Recreation was making her tour through, she made a identifying just how special it was. As a result, we've seen a huge volume of traffic coming in. It's not something that's onerous in terms of municipal staff or whatever, but it does have costs involved with it. The land that is sitting on to the township, so we can't be complaining about that. But we've got a responsibility in making sure that that is maintained, and it's one of the features of our community. Thank you.
So you would support the whole, perhaps we can look at it at two different things. As one is a 2021 contribution, and we can discuss later whether we want to have it year over year or that they would have to request each year. I think that's a lot to decide today that we want to, once you commit to making a year over year contribution, you're pretty locked in, and that becomes, they're dependent on that as part of their revenue. So further, Councillor McKechnie, sorry.
Yeah, I agree with that. This year's fine, and maybe even the end of this council, but we shouldn't burden the next council with $12,000 every year. Maybe they'll want to make a change in it. Maybe they want to give them more. Maybe they want to give them less. So I definitely don't think this is a lifetime contribution.
Okay. One thing that did come up in the discussions with the delegation last month was, and I'm not sure who brought it up, but there is a possibility that in that initial budget request where they broke it down, how to come up with the 12,500, some of it was for maintenance, and it was brought up, well, could the municipality take that on? Because we're trusting their budget numbers to say this is how much it costs to do some trail rehabilitation and some, whether it be mulch or some type of trail surface, that type of thing. Could that be done in kind? Now it's still, that the municipality actually, our staff take that on and do some work this year. So while in kind still costs us money because we're hiring staff and we're using material, it would be quite likely a lot less expensive if we do that in-house than if we give them the money and then they contract that out to somebody else. The other thing that they brought up in their delegation is they're looking at forming a Friends of the Sculpture Forest and doing more. I know they've got a fabulous volunteer board right now, but to do more fundraising. A lot of people go through there and don't know that there is a possibility to make donations. And I think that's one area, just as with, I'm noticing, talking to the people at the Halliburton Highland Land Trust, the donations that have come through for Barnum Creek Nature Reserve are fabulous, and people are buying acres, and it's really starting to take off. So could the Sculpture Forest rely more heavily on donations? They put the donation boxes in, and sure enough, people are putting money in them. So I am definitely wanting to support them myself in some regard. I just feel that the 12,500 might be a little on the high side. And I'm not sure if I want to commit year over year. I would look at doing something on a 1-year basis and looking at their financials after a year. And if they want to put in a request next year, it would be in a separate request. So that's my 2 cents. Councillor Smith.
You know, I made a comment earlier about recreation and culture and the growth in that part of our budget. And somebody says, well, percentages can be deceiving. Well, I will say, yes, percentages can be deceiving. And I imagine for 2020, based on our spending in Head Lake Park, that 19% will increase significantly. But this comes down to priorities. And the constituents, and maybe the area that I represent is unique. The constituents contact me almost every day to complain about road conditions. They don't contact me every day to tell me that we need to provide more support to the arts. And that'll probably be an invitation to the few people that are listening that they'll say, well, I better send Smith an email and complain about the arts, but that's fine. They'll get a response, and I'll state my position and why I feel that way. But what we do here when we accept these requests, and as we do, we'll have to give them some money. It's a worthwhile cause. We've become the Banff of the East or whatever. The fact of the matter is that, like every other field, art needs to stand on its own. It needs to be economically viable. And as the mayor points out, there are a lot of visitors that come to the community to look at the sculptured forest. And, we can allow the supporters to come and make one call on us as a council and pick up a check for $12,500. That's going to be year after year, forever and ever. We can say, no, that's too much. You need to do a better job of fundraising from those 30,000 people that come to this. If there's 30,000 people that go and enjoy that sculptured forest every year, then terrific. They ought to pay for it. They ought to make a contribution to those donation boxes. They ought to write a check. The arts, like anybody else, like the Halliburton Outdoor Association and the Fish Hatchery, or any other organization in the community, needs to go out and make calls, identify supporters, and get them to write a check or give them a credit card number, send them an e-transfer. And if we just say, no, well, we'll look after you, need 12,500, here it is from the community, we'll give it to you this year, next year, and the year after. That's the wrong approach. We're not forcing them to identify supporters and get those supporters to step up, with their funding, because not everybody believes that each and every one of these things is really important. And again, we're just layering it on as opposed to taking something away. If you think the sculptured forest is a terrific jewel in our community, then identify something that isn't a terrific jewel and reduce the funding that you allocate to that, as opposed to just continuing to increase the size of the pie that goes to recreation. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Councillor Smith. Barbara, I can't pull up on this very quickly. In their presentation, do you recall what made up their budget? This is only this letter of the in-kind, but in their budget, I'm going to go back to the trail maintenance. That is something that we do really well, and we have staff and we have product that I think that we could work on. And I can't recall in their budget, I know there was a fairly significant amount to go to an honorarium for the I'm not sure what the title of the position of the person who in charge of the sculpture forest, but there was an honorarium to a person for work that they do. And I don't know if you're able to recall what specifically made up the 12,500 line. Are you able to pull that up?
Yeah, I'm just looking for that right now.
Okay.
I believe it was in their presentation.
It was in the presentation, and it's just we'd have to go back to a previous agenda. So, like I say, we can say absolute yes. We can say yes to 12,500 for this year only. We can say absolute no. Or we can go somewhere in between and say, here's an amount for 2021. And sort of as Councillor Smith says, you know, there's other ways. Like there's better fundraising and better communication. I know they've got the boxes that are great for people who are walking with the change in their pocket, but there's other ways that people do fundraise for organizations. An example, Friends of the Library, they do a fabulous job and help support the library. They raise generally around $20,000 a year through different ways. So I'm sure there is support for this. It's a fabulous thing to have here in Dysart, but it's also almost, I did ask at the time, I believe the delegation, I asked Barbolan if they had looked to get any support from the county. While it sits in Dysart, it's ranked number 2 of things to do in Halliburton. So that means the county. Barbara?
So looking at the budget from the sculpture forest, there was 5,000 allocated for maintenance, trail maintenance.
So I'm wondering, and I'm going to put a proposal on the table and see if there's support for the municipality contribute $5,000 towards maintenance, and that includes material and I'm sorry, Andrew, if you're listening. I don't know if Andrew will be in the room listening, staff, but if there's a possibility that we can contribute that, it wouldn't necessarily be in hard dollars. Some of it would be material and some of it would be staff time, but it's a $5,000 contribution. What were the other line items that made up the 12,500?
Just have to go back to the document.
Yeah, sorry.
Just one moment.
While Barbara's doing that, Councillor Smith?
Well, they didn't tell us what they were going to spend our money on. They identified that they needed, total revenue of $32,000, and 12,500 was to come from us. Their expenses also total 32,000, and when they break out the expenses, there was 5,000 on the landscaping / maintenance line item. But
right.
There's a curator that's being paid 8,500. There's a summer student that's being paid 8,500. Those are just line items of expenses. They got mail and courier expenses and so forth. They got insurance, promotion, the rest of the stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. And so it was the curator of the 8,500. I called it an honorarium or a stipend or whichever, but that I don't believe has been in previous budgets. So where I think that Dysart can contribute would be in the trail maintenance, and that we could do it as in-kind work. So it would not be cutting a check. It would be that we would participate with them. We'd still have to incorporate that as a line item in our budget, but it wouldn't be a line item as a check as a grant. It would be in our parks budget dedicated to trail maintenance in there. So is there support for that?
Can I comment?
Yes, please.
Yeah, the sculpture forest is another wonderful attraction to our community, which is pretty well run by volunteers. I'm pretty sure. I don't know a heck of a lot about it, but just because I don't know a heck of a lot about it doesn't mean that I don't know how important it is to our community. If they attract 30,000 people to that sculpture forest, there's a lot of money being dropped in our municipality. So a one-time thing, if you wanted to designate some of the 12,500 to us donating Andrew Willoughby's staff time, I'd be in favor of a partial of it, but I definitely think they're asking for something that I think this one time, if it's 12,500, I definitely endorse that, just because of the importance of just look around our community, walk through there. I mean, I haven't spent a lot of time in there, but I've definitely gone through it. It's a pretty cool place. Thank you.
Yep, it is a very cool place, as you go, Councillor Clark.
Yeah, I agree, Madam Mayor, that I think we should be partially contributing on an ongoing basis, but I think we need to sit down with them and see where we can bring some opportunities for their cost reduction. As you've outlined, we may have capacity within some of our existing park staff to do that. And it's in kind, but if it reduces their overall liability in terms of operating, then it's, we kill two birds with one stone. We get, we maintain the facility. And we also discuss with them, are there opportunities, or let them explore opportunities for increasing their revenue. And I know that doesn't happen overnight. I don't know that we're going to be able to say that, we can't give them a proper contribution this year, but on an ongoing basis, they may be able to develop a strategy that where we can help, but they also increase their revenue stream to be less independent or less dependent on us. Thank you.
Okay, so are there further suggestions as to how to deal with the request and compromises and alternate solutions? Councillor Donaldson.
I'm in agreement to doing the in-kind with the trail maintenance, since we have the equipment and the ability to help them with that. But I also think that because they're asking, even though we don't know exactly what it's for, besides, I think it's a curator maybe. And it is quite helpful to have somebody go through that with the people. So it is an important part. And I know that a lot of people go through there. Like, that's a lot of people going through there that are coming into town. So I think it is an important drawing card to Halliburton. And so I would be agreeable to do the in-kind plus a grant for almost the amount that they're asking for or close to it.
Okay, so in kind of $5,000 towards trail maintenance, and then a check for $7,500. Okay, so comments on that suggestion? Councillor Wood Roberts, anything? Yep.
Yeah, I would agree with Tammy. This summer, because of our pandemic, we weren't able to have the sculptures on the main street in Halliburton, yet town was fairly busy. The summer previous, there was a lot of people in town because the sculptures on the main street were tied directly to the sculpture forest. So they greatly helped in the activity and the sales on the main street. So I think it's important this year to support them as well during this pandemic, and just that they understand it's a one-time thing, and go from there.
Okay, so every councillor's had Councillor Clark, one more, go ahead.
Yeah, I think we need a better understanding as to, what the funds are for, where the shortfalls are. And I would prefer that, Barbara has a chance to sit down and go through that with them, just to kind of see, where those issues are, and then come back to us. I think, right now we're trying to fund something based on patients, so.
Councillor Donaldson?
Just a quick question of something else that we can help provide them that's already in-house. I just know you said it is Dysart property that it's on, and also the insurance thing. It said that they had their own insurance, but is it something that we can also provide there, since we're paying a hefty price anyways, and just add that to it?
I'm not sure if they would still need some form of insurance, whether it be if they borrow board of directors liability insurance. I'm not sure like where else they have to have. That's a good question to ask, exactly how their insurance is broken down. So like I say, we have some choices here to make. There can still be a cash donation as well as in kind. It can be for 2021 only to continue the conversation and get them to come back in December with a budget request again. So Councillor Donaldson has a proposal on the table, which is $77,500 grant, and the remainder in kind. Basically, it's the trail maintenance that might actually end up costing us less if we do it in-house to do what they need to do. But so the dollar value would be, we have to incorporate that into our park budget. But so is there support for Councillor Donaldson's request, which is the check and the remainder in kind? Councillor McKechnie, are you okay with that? Yes, go ahead, Councillor McKechnie.
Yes, I'm okay with that. Because I like I say, I think that they're asking for it. I definitely agree that maybe they should talk to Barbara and say, well, we're going to spend the $7,500 this way or whatever. We should know where our money's going for sure. But they haven't. It's not like they come to the trough every year and ask for money. And look at, it's a pretty special place they've got over there. So I mean, and when you think of the amount of money, somebody mentioned here earlier about us supporting the arts and all this. So how much money does the provincial or federal government support arts on? Holy cat. I mean, this is an important part of our all our communities, even though I'm not a guy.
Well, I think it's a good compromise in cutting a check for the whole amount. I think we can do some stuff in-house, and it is supporting it for this year. And we can have this conversation again with them in either November or December, as early as they can. Better actually probably ask them to come back in November. They don't have to come back in person, but with the request, so that Barbara can incorporate that. And we can see how they've done with a friends group or for their fundraising and that type of stuff. The request may be less for the following year. And the trail maintenance maybe only needs to be done once in a while. I think what's happened is it's gotten quite a bit behind, and it was really noticed this year with the enormous number of visitors. I live in the neighborhood behind it, and I walk there all the time, and there is always, it doesn't matter the weather, there is always somebody in the sculpture forest. So if there's consensus to do what Councillor Donaldson mentioned, which is the split, I see general support for that. So Barbara, are you okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. So the remainder 5,000 will actually increase in our parks budget under Glebe Park, I suppose. I don't know where we'll just have to put it in the parks budget with an asterisk,
There is actually in our revenue and expenditure report, there is a separate area for Glebe Park. So maybe we record it on specifically for Glebe Park.
And for the sake of the Glebe Park Committee, make sure that there's a note that says sculpture forest.
Right.
Okay, so the last request that isn't in the slide deck but was considered was also the BIA, and I'm not sure that was for the water and flowers. Oh, sorry, Mallory.
I just wanted to say we had a resolution just to acknowledge receipt of the letter from the sculpture forest.
I do have that. This would be timely to do that before we move on to that. So that it is a resolution to receive the letter that we have in our agenda. So I need a mover seconder for that. Councillor Clark, Councillor Wood Roberts. Thank you. There's so few resolutions today, I forget to look down on that. So be it resolved, the council acknowledges receipt of the letter from the representatives of the Haliburton Sculpture Forest regarding in-kind contributions. All in favor? And that's carried. So back to the BIA request. Councillor Wood Roberts, you were going to speak to that.
Well, the BIA, well, it's not really asking for an extra $5,000. I believe our discussion was in that we already budget $5,000, but if the municipality had a part-time parks person or something that could actually assume that role to do the physical end of the work, then the BIA would just pay that back to the municipality.
Okay, so really it's more of an operational. It's trying to figure out the operational.
It takes about 2.5 hours a day.
Okay, so we'll have to take that internally.
So it wasn't an ask for extra money.
Okay. So Barbara, I don't think we need to have that discussion today then, I suppose, because it's not changing the budget. It's if we take it on in-house, the BIA will pay you back, or the BIA are going to see if we can't take that out in-house, then you'll have to put it out to tender to see if you can find somebody. The person is no longer around. Tamara?
Just wondering if Nancy knows if they had their own equipment, if the contractors were using their own equipment. I think they were, right?
I think the equipment belongs to one of the BIA members.
Oh, okay. If you could find out more details on how that works and so forth, and then we can review it internally to see what we need.
Okay.
Okay.
So then that being said, that was all the grants to cover. And then the next thing was going back to our slide deck. was under the things that had come up from draft one to in between, and any counselor at any time had the opportunity to reach out to Barbara. She was going to respond all, but I'm just going to find that slide. It's right after the one that says grants. It's general government. So, oh no, sorry. Where's the one that's additional items for consideration? It's after environment. There it is. Okay. So I'll speak to the first one because that was my suggestion at the first draft budget meeting. It says economic development reserve. If you recall, we were talking about housing. We were talking about all the different housing opportunities. And I was just referring to the fact that sometimes partway through the year, we get a request to support something. We supported Whispering Pines when they were coming to town through waiving of building permit fees and that sort of thing. And Barbara spoke about this first thing in the morning in this overall presentation. And so when I brought it up at the first draft, I was referring to housing. And since Barbara and I spoke, and she said, perhaps calling it more of an economic development reserve. This isn't for a committee to be spending on committee work. This is if we get a request partway through, whether it be a waiving of a sewer hookup or like I said, a building permit fee, a contribution of some type that we feel it would only way money would come out if that reserve is by resolution of council. So it would have to meet a certain criteria, but we don't have any extra pocket. We have development reserve and we have working funds. Working funds are exactly that. It's an in and an out, and it's making sure your bank account's not at zero. And development reserve, a lot of them are allocated. And so through discussion from a first draft was instead of it just being for housing, that it be for economic development opportunities. And so it's on the floor for discussion. We definitely can take it out. Councillor Clark.
Yeah, no, I think it's important to have a bit of money there to be able to address, like you're saying, these one-offs that come up that are of benefit to the overall community. Also in terms of things such as studies and if we see an opportunity, we've got to be able to, in many cases, act fairly quickly on it. By the fact that it'll come to council and council has a chance to have input as to the spending of the funds. So that's good. But no, I think it's important, and it's not a lot of money. So.
It's not a lot, and it's funny, sometimes we have to spend $1.5 million on roads, but we can spend more time talking about $2,000 or $3,000 sometimes. And I just think it would build up, does not need to be spent in 2021. It's the concept would be that when there's an opportunity and throughout the year, and there hadn't been an allocation for that, there hadn't been, we can get a request in September and we say, well, it's not in the budget. Where do we pull that money from? Oh, that fits the criteria for that. So it's not as much of a hit, and it's a little easier. So is there any other comments? Should we keep that in? Should we start go ahead, Councillor Smith.
Oh, sorry, I was just signaling that I would support leaving that in. I think that it's a fair concept, and you don't get to spend the money unless you've got it set aside, and you still don't get to spend it until you bring something to council. And so to do that year after year, eventually you'll build up a bit of a pot of money, $10,000 a year.
Thank you. Okay. Put it this way: is there any objection to starting an economic development reserve? So there's no objection, so that means there's support. So we will keep that 10,000, or add it, I should say. It wasn't in the original budget. The next item was a curling club repair eaves trough. Unfortunately, Deputy Mayor Kennedy's not here today, missing him to speak to that, but that was a cost estimate. It is our building, and there is continual water damage problems there with not having proper eaves trough. So any comments on adding that $5,000 to this year's budget. Okay, there's support for that. Councillor McKechnie?
I just think we should definitely support it because it's, if you don't fix it, you're gonna just create a bigger problem and probably put another zero on that 5,000.
Yeah.
Fix the foundation or whatever. So it's a problem that's got to be fixed.
Okay, that stays. And then next is the Sport Hall of Fame repairs. Again, Councillor, our Deputy Mayor Kennedy has been, he asked for that request to go in, and he's been our committee rep on the Hall of Fame group, and they're working to do, I believe this was for additional like work in that stage area. Barbara, if you want to speak to that. Thanks.
Yeah, it was just some cosmetic work in the area where they have the display, I believe, in the community room at the arena upstairs. So, yeah, $2,500, and I'm thinking we can probably absorb it in the current budget.
So we add that to the budget, or we'd absorb it in what's?
We can absorb that into the budget.
Okay, so we're not
We've
adding.
got some money in there already for general maintenance at the arena.
Okay, so that's good to know. So that wouldn't be a plus. It would be included in the general maintenance of the arena. Okay, and then lastly, on that slide deck, it says County Road 10 turnaround. So Councillor Donaldson, I'm going to get you to speak to that. We have no idea a dollar value to put to that. It's not really a turnaround, it's a pull by or a pull over.
Yeah. Yes, it's a pullover. And so I don't know if I gave all the details before on it and why it's would be important to have it at this end.
Yeah.
But so I'll give you some background on it so everybody knows. So the property was owned by the previous owner for over 50 years and was gifted to Dysart at a council meeting in February of 2019, if you remember. Their lawyer, I think, the estate lawyer, came and gave it to us. And so we own it, and it's not a piece of property that is buildable. So it's just going to sit there. But it just happens to sit right where there needs to be a pull-off, because on the corner of Loop Road and County Road 10, Elephant Lake Road, for the last 50 years, there's been a business there that everybody could pull off, get fuel, eat, and it is no longer there. It is now a private residence. And he has it all blocked off so that nobody can get into the area of where everybody would park. So the people have been, and because I travel this road daily, sometimes several times a day, I see what's happening at this intersection, and people are pulling over onto, there's two pieces of private property before you get to the Dysart property, and they pull over in front of their houses, which both of those houses are very close to the road. So, not that they have complained or anything, but it is a chance that they get blocked in because there's vehicles there. I've come around that corner and people have been on the road, just stopped. So there is a need for it. And there's also a lot of other things that could happen there, like the signage. As you know, I think that come to council that Todd's signage went up in price, which there was 2 Todd signs at that intersection with 3 or 4 businesses on it, which it went from $300 to over $900 for the same thing. So there's another need to have advertising of what is on that road, which there are probably over a dozen businesses now on that road. So I've went the Haliburton County sign coordinator. I had a chat with him and he seemed fine with it, that there was no reason why we couldn't. The county roads department that specializes in driveways come out and looked at it with me and okayed that the sight lines were a possibility for an in and out driveway, which is really good, not to just have one driveway because people stop and check their loads. They also know that this is the last area that for cell service, because it's very intermittent on that road. So they stop, check, and especially if they have directions, that's where they stop and do that. I should take pictures. There was 20 motorcycles there one time, just on the side of the road because they had nowhere to pull off. So there is a lot of activity in that intersection. So, and Jeff come out and looked at it also and we marked it off where the driveways could go. So all of that is the preliminary stuff has been done. And basically I just have rough estimates of what the cost would be. And it could change because the road is also being done there and the ditching will be done by the county. Since it's a county road, they're doing 5 more kilometers of ditching and doing the road sort of in between the end of the road and the beginning of the road. So all that ditching could go in that area. So whatever our price is, it could be a little bit better. So it would be they suggested that it could be 200 loads of fill go in there, and the pit is rate 2 kilometers that we could pull material out of the pit if we weren't using if the county ditching was not enough. It's only 2 kilometers from there or across the road from there. There's 2 pits that were possible at $70 a load. So I guess it would be better to have a number that the most it could be, but I feel like if we time it right, that it could be a lot less. And I don't know if I'm the one responsible for coming up with the numbers. I can throw a number out there and say, maybe it's going to cost $15,000, but it's just a good guess that I would do.
So you didn't hear back from Jeff Sisson with how many loads he thought it would take, and we can price that out per load.
He thought it would be 200 loads and at $70 a load. But that's not considering that the county has 5 kilometers of ditching to do on both sides, and we can use that fill as well.
And they're ditching this year? County Road 10. Yeah.
So on County Road 10, 5 kilometers was done this year. The first 5 kilometers, like going towards Maynooth, that first kilometer. So then the next 5 is this coming year. And then the last 5, which will end up at that location, is the next year, 2022.
And we still need culverts to create the driveways and then the gravel on top of the fill. So perhaps we should just put it may not be complete, but at least if we put something in for this year, like you say, just an estimate, and then we approve that the county can put material there and work on that for 2022 for completion. Maybe even just say $10,000. It seems like even an awful lot of money for Dysart, but would that be sufficient and knowing that the project wouldn't be completed till 2022?
It might only take 10,000 depending on how we can, if it's timed correctly. And there could be a lot of in-kind if that was possible on Dysart's side, because people would be willing to help. And just having the width of a vehicle in there would, just like it is at the other 2 private dwellings, would be just enough to promote people to pull over there rather than at the private dwelling. So, I mean, that's not going to take very much at all. And basically what's there is trees that just need to come down and the fill put in at the width of a vehicle to start the process. So it would be, and we can add to it later. Yes, for sure.
Yeah, just right now we need a placeholder to try. So the goal of the end of today, before we adjourn, which I don't think will be too much longer, would be that we have given Barbara direction to come forward with for our, our third and final meeting, that we can basically be like almost there. So we need a placeholder. It's not necessarily saying that the work, we're not trying to pin you down to an exact amount for the total project, but that we would put something in there for this year's budget. So is there other numbers that people want to contribute or suggest?
I just 5,000 just to get it started, because by the sounds of it, all you need to do is get the 2 culverts in and a bit of stuff removed, and then we'll see where it goes from the county dropping stuff in there. 5,000, I think, would probably get it started.
You got to somebody's got to cut the trees down, so that's time, and culvert has to get done before you can start dumping fill. So maybe is 5 okay? We'll put for this year.
Yep, that's a great start. And those trees could be down in a day.
Okay. So is everybody okay if we put 5 as a placeholder for the County Road 10 pullover? Okay, so we're going to add that. I'm just keeping track, as I'm sure Barbara is. So I have a total. I'm going to say what I have, Barbara, which is adding from the time we started the morning at 0.22%. I'm not going to do the percent, but we have an additional $6,250 for Rails End, $2,500 for Haliburton Lake Beach or the Haliburton Lake Association, whichever. I still put in $12,500 for the sculpture forest, because 5 is in one line and 7,500 is direct grant. 10,000 for economic development reserve, and 5,000 for the curling club eaves trough. We didn't need to count the 2,500 for Sport Hall of Fame, because we're going to incorporate that into our budget. So then an additional 5,000 for County Road 10 comes to $41,250 to be added today. And then we're going to go back to the question of the asterisks. There's 2 things. First of all, so there's 2 things, and then I'm sure I'm missing a whole bunch of other ones. But the speed limit study of 47,000 and the request from Councillor Smith to add additional funds for ditching and brushing. Am I missing anything glaring that somebody wanted to bring up today that was like, we've never talked about this, XYZ, anything? I think all the other departments, and we went through administration, went through council, we went through planning, we've been through bylaw. Was there anything in any other? Okay, Barbara?
So I made a note earlier in the meeting that Councillor Clark had one item to add to the items for consideration to, I believe it was community information.
Yes, that is for the insert with the mail out, and we haven't got a lot of information what that would cost. We do know there would be some printing and stuffing costs. I think Tamar had estimated that perhaps it could be upwards to about 16,000. I don't know if that's based on 2 mail outs or just a single mail out, but I think we're only talking about 1 mail out in May.
And would that be the mail out with the final tax?
Yes.
Stuff? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it won't be
I'm not too sure.
Yeah, it won't be 16,000 because we won't have additional postage if we keep it to a 1-pager. It would be the cost of printing
And stuffing.
13,000. How many tax bills go out? Oh.
We'll find out today. We're in the process of getting costing right now, so we can just
Maybe.
earmark the number and adjust it.
Maybe we put in $2,000 for that.
Oh, it'd be more than that.
I can just quickly check to see what we've paid in the past for an insert.
Okay, Councillor Smith?
Yeah, thanks. We've done those as recently as 2 years ago. A single insert in tax bills. One of them was related to septics, another was related to garbage or waste disposal.
Yeah.
And they weren't even a full piece of paper. They were sort of 1/3 of an 8.5 by 11.
Yeah,
Flipped in the envelopes there.
yeah, we were talking about the full newsletter. We used to do a full newsletter that was generalized about the whole municipality.
But this is a one-pager. This is not a full newsletter.
Just a one pager. I don't think it's that expensive.
No, we'll find out. We'll confirm.
Okay, so we'll hold that. So thank you for bringing that up. We certainly, it'll cost something. Somewhere in between 2,000 and 16,000. Not that much. And I think that was a great suggestion to bring forward, but I don't think the postage is going to increase, because if we do it on a one page and not heavy bonded paper, it doesn't change the weight. So then it's the staff time and Councillor McKechnie?
Yeah, I think Councillor Clark's idea is great. And I honestly believe that we should be doing something maybe quarterly, giving our constituents an update on a lot of different events or items that are going on, spending their money. I just think that we should be educating them more on what we're doing. I think if we send something out every quarter, it'd be great. That's just my opinion.
The benefit of sending it with the tax bill is, one, it goes to every property, and secondly, you don't get the additional postage. So every time, if you send something out as a separate supplement, then you're into the $16,000 range to send something out. So I think this is just a tag along. Okay, Barbara?
Yeah, the biggest cost is going to be your postage. So if you can include it with an interim or a final tax bill, keep it to one page, then it actually isn't that costly to print the notice. It's the postage.
Yeah. So we will find something to add to that for when our budget comes back. So then there's the other two big ticket items then is to discuss adding additional ditching and brushing. And if we even want to do that, and if we do want to do that, what dollar figure, and keep in mind that pretty much just 1% is 100,000 for a very round number's sake. So if we are already at the additional 41,250 and so many thousand for an insert, we're just increased it by 0.4 or perhaps 0.5%, so we're at 0.7 now. So let's open the floor to those two items, because they may go in tandem, of the prep work and the speed limit study. Councillor Clark first.
Yeah, let's, I would suggest that we throw at least 50,000 at the ditching and brushing. To bring us up to an overall, 1% is not, it's not undoable. Or it's definitely doable, I would think, and it does address, as Councillor Smith has identified, we're kind of stymied in a lot of these areas in terms of doing some of the proper road, getting the ditching, the brushing done. So it's a step in the right direction.
So on that same note, so we'll hear from each councillor, you're going to suggest we put 50,000 into some additional ditching and brushing. Where's your stance on the speed limit study?
Yeah, we need a speed. Yeah. It's there's so many seniors and so many people walking the roads up here. I think the speed limit study is important. Thank you.
Okay, so then that's adding an additional 97,000. Okay, next. Who wants to go next? Councillor McKechnie?
I'm agreeable to definitely getting some more money for infrastructure, but I think that Rob should have a big input in this in regard to, so we're going to get this road done. And in the next year or two after that, are we going to be resurfacing it? Because we wanted to come back and do it again. So the ditching and the brushing should be definitely coordinated, and Rob should have a big say in whether he can coordinate that with the paving, the resurfacing companies. In regard to the speed, I think the $50,000 is a waste of money. Right now, we don't have that kind of money. I'd rather see it put into the brushing or the ditching, and also my radar signs. So, thank you.
Okay, so would you support the 50,000 or ask Rob to ask what he feels he can get done, as opposed to putting $1 and come back at the next budget with the?
Yeah, that's what I'd like to see. Yes, thank you.
So we're not going to set the amount. We're going to ask Rob to look at that. Okay, and I think Councillor Clark, you're sort of agreeing with that. Councillor, who's next? Councillor Smith? Councillor Wood Roberts, go ahead.
I totally agree with the additional money for the brushing and ditching. The speed limit study, I'm not a big fan of. I think it could just open up a bigger can of worms. I think you can get a lot of enforcement, $7,000 on people who are driving carelessly on our roadways. Even if you pay it privately, if it happens on our roadways, then we get that income back from those charges that are laid. And first of all, education, no matter what the sign says.
Councillor Wood Roberts, we had a little lag there, so I'm just going to ask you to repeat that last bit.
Which part?
Sorry, just at the end, you kind of, the old garble.
People are going to drive however fast they want to drive. So until you actually do some enforcement, it's not going to change driving habits.
Okay, so would you support adding to ditching and brushing, getting Rob to sort of maybe give us that more accurate figure? It might be 40,000, it might be 60, it might be like, let's ask Rob his advice on that, and we'll take out the speed study. So we have a couple of people supporting that so far. Councillor Donaldson.
Did Rob tell us how much it is a kilometer on the ditching, the cost and brushing? Did he give us a kilometer? I know he did, it was 20,000 for resurfacing, but did he give us a per kilometer? But did he give us a number for kilometers for brushing? I don't remember, that's all.
Councillor Smith is nodding. Yeah.
Well, I thought that, again, it depends very much on the terrain, but I thought he threw out $10,000 a kilometer to do the ditching and brushing.
Okay, so with $50,000 thrown to brushing, that's really only get us 5 kilometers of road, right? So I am agreeable with that. Throw the money at the ditching and brushing, because and even though I do have an issue with the county road on brushing is a serious thing when it's been, hasn't been done for 5 or 10 years, and it blocks a whole corner of a driveway coming out and you can't see. So I feel like brushing is way more important, because people would slow down if they could see the person coming out of a driveway, but they can't because of the brush. So I'm in the same, I definitely vote for brush. All the money that whatever we have to make that 1% goes to brushing, and forfeit the other.
Yep. Yeah. There's the speeding. People are going to continue. Okay. So, Councillor Smith, did you want to speak to that? Sure.
Yeah, thanks. I think I'm agreeing with the sentiment that's been expressed here, that the ditching and brushing is more important than the speed study. And I'd like Rob to feel less constrained. The discussion here of 40 or 50,000 for brushing and ditching. prior to having any budget discussions as such, I threw out that $100,000.
Sure.
And it wasn't like he said, well, I'll never use that. That's way too much. I go back to, and this really way before I was a counselor, members of council showed up at the Canisius Lake Cottage Owners Association each spring and talked about that stretch of Canisius Lake Road and getting the ditching and brushing done before it could get a surface treatment. Well, here we are. This is the third budget we're preparing, and Rob's acknowledged, look at 3 years in a row, 2018, 19, and 20. He was sure that was going to be done. Based on his assurances, I told folks this summer, yeah, no, that road's definitely going to get done. He hasn't even started it. And so giving him a few $1,000s isn't going to make much of a dent in a backlog that's now more than 3 years long, just on that one road. There are other roads. Irish Line is a disaster. In the spring, that'll go for many days. That water that stretches that road will be under significant water. And, his date for there was, John, it'll be 2024 before I get out to not to do a surface treatment at Irish Line, just to deal with some of the issues there. It's the wrong answer. So I'd say I want to stand by the $100,000 for ditching and brushing. Let's get on this, get that work done.
So I think Rob's not in on the call. So what I'm going to suggest is that we leave that blank for now. We've been able, I think there was agreement that we were going to take the speed limit study out. So we will take that out. We are going to ask Rob to come up with a figure for ditching and brushing. There's no point to get so far ahead that he isn't going to be able to catch up with the road resurfacing. So let's leave that maybe open-ended to a maximum of 100. That would take us over to $140,000. So it's 1.4% increase. He's not in on the call. We're not going to come up just pulling a number out of our hat. We need his expertise and he needs time to be able to come up with that number. So I would suggest that we wait to bring that into a second draft to know that exact number. I think that's fair enough. So we will tell him after, because I actually told him at the break that I said, we're done with you for today, because the other were just, and we don't need to put a number in right now. We can have that. In fact, perhaps for the sake, if that's the only thing we're hinging on right now, which is what I think, that he could have that for as well at the next council meeting, not the next budget meeting. That if we were able to decide that as well as the road construction, because we've asked him for the report with that, Councillor Wood Roberts, you're going to set a time to meet up with him for the village roads. And so if we could have that, if Rob could have that report for the January meeting, we'd be one step ahead. So, Barbara, there's a couple other things on our agenda, which is the insurance renewal. Okay, Councillor Smith, go ahead.
I know it doesn't affect our budget, but one of the things that Barbara talked about in her charts here is a strategic plan for $50,000. And I'd like to get, and it doesn't need to be today because it's not going to affect our budget, given your plan is to pull it out of I guess I'll call it a reserve that we set aside in terms of the provincial grant that we got for, long-term productivity, if you like. But I'd sure like to get a better understanding of the approach here before we commit to anything.
Okay, and that's a really good point. It was something I was intending to bring up, but seeing as we've added a few things to the budget, I was going to suggest that the remainder 25,000 of an estimated cost that we actually put on the levy this year, but I changed my mind to bring that forward, seeing as we brought some other things forward. Brushing and ditching got more expensive, but in terms of how an approach, maybe Tamara, I'll let you speak to that. In terms of how we would go about with a strategic plan.
Well, I think we were looking at putting out an RFP probably around the summertime to get started in the fall. So probably because we're looking at working on the service delivery review starting in February. So that's probably going to take a bit of time. And that can help us also, I think, define where we want to go with the strategic plan. Because I think you were talking about doing a corporate plan rather than a community-based plan. So that'll be more internally focused.
Did that answer your question, Councillor Smith, or are you still?
Well, it sounds like this is something that we'll be able to have a fulsome discussion on at some point in the future before any commitments are made and anything gets locked in here. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Then that's good enough for today. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think a lot will flow through when we have discussions for the service delivery review and sort of start to prioritize what some of those recommendations were. So there's, as I said, I was going to suggest that the balance beyond this year's levy, and I've changed my mind throughout the morning to hold off on that. So that said, I think we're very, very close, which I know makes us all happy. And it's been awesome and great and very productive discussion. And I'm really proud of all the hard work that staff has done and all the dedication that councillors have done to put thought. You know, our budgets are one of the most important things we do to guide the work for the municipality for the year. And it's really great if we can, particularly when we get a little bit better handle on the roads and the transportation section, and that we can even be planning more than 1 year out, like really look ahead. That would be just great. So we have the municipal insurance program renewal proposal. Just FYI, the county insurance went like, oh my gosh, way higher than even this. So I meant to mention the county had their first budget meeting on Monday. So, you know, if you've got nothing to do Monday and you're sitting at home and you want to go on YouTube, you can watch the county council budget meeting on Monday. But insurance is a big hit. So Barbara, if you want to speak to that maybe.
Yes, so as I mentioned in my presentation earlier, that the insurance renewal for 2021 has increased substantially. The total increase is $49,000, and if you add in the PST, it rounds up to $53,000. And the two primary types of insurance coverage that comprise the increase is the general liability and the property coverage. Property coverage went up just under 20%, or sorry, general liability went up 24%, and property went up 20%. So quite substantial increases over the previous years. We've actually enjoyed some very modest increases over the last few years, but the culture of the market is changing. It's becoming more of a harder market. And this is not exclusive to municipal operations. This is commercial insurance coverage in general.
So it's really just to receive the renewal proposal. Councillor Smith, go ahead.
Yep. Thank you. I was pleased to see the increase in the deductible from 10 to 25,000. I wondered, Barbara, if you had asked the insurance company what would be the impact of even a higher deductible. You know, I mean, personally, I carry $5,000 deductible, and it's a way of dealing with insurance costs. No, I know that when we had the roof problem at the arena, we celebrated the fact that, oh, it's going to be, you know, we'll be able to get the storm damage repaired through insurance claims. Well, insurance claims cost money because, as Deputy Mayor Kennedy pointed out a couple of months back, insurance companies are in business to make money for their shareholders. And so we pay for those things one way or another. And so increasing the deductible even to $100,000 for an organization our size wouldn't be outrageous, particularly if it came with a good reduction to premiums. And so I wonder if you've asked them that question in terms of, okay, 10 to 25 is at least a step in the right direction, but what would be the impact on our premiums if we had $100,000 deductible?
Yeah, so I haven't asked that question, but I can reach out to the insurance and see what feedback they can provide to us. If we were to look at a higher deductible, whether it be $50,000 or $100,000.
I think it's worth asking. Thank you.
It's a good point, because it's like, you get a ding in your vehicle and you say, oh, okay, that's $2,000 or $3,000. I might as well fix it myself, because each time, you make a claim, you're going to pay for it someday or the other. So increasing that deductible is one way to mitigate the expense.
Yeah.
So
the
for now,
purpose of insurance is not to recover every expense you might incur as a result of an accident or an act of nature. It's to avoid a financial disaster.
Yeah.
And, frankly, $50,000, although it's going to be inconvenient to us, is not a financial disaster. We've got reserves, a working fund of $1.6 million, likely to increase. If you had to draw on for some kind of crisis like that, we'll get through it and deal with it in the next budget cycle. As you point out, Madam Mayor, the same way any individual does. Frankly, you don't report a minor accident because your premiums will go up big time. So forget it.
okay, for now, we are going to accept the municipal insurance program renewal, but we will give direction to Barbara to ask what that would mean. And we just renew for a year, January 1st, 2021 to January 1st, 2022. So I'd need a motion to accept. Councillor McKechnie, Councillor Clark, Smith. So that was Councillor McKechnie, Councillor Smith. Be it resolved that council accepts the municipal insurance program renewal proposal from Marsh Canada Limited effective January 1st, 2021 to January 1st, 2022. All in favor? Okay, that's carried. And that concludes our meeting today. Just to recap, looking at my numbers, if we added, just say for a round number, just to throw a number in there, 50,000 to the ditching and brushing and an amount to of a couple $1,000s for a tax insert, we'd be looking at adding $93,000 to the 0.22. So that would take us to sort of a 1.2. Is that correct, Barbara? Do you want to help me recap?
Yeah, so I've been tracking the change here.
I'm using my calculator on my phone.
So just to clarify, we're looking at the 50,000 for the ditching, and that number is still open for discussion. That will be clarified at the next council meeting if we want to add more after Robin has done his review. And then the speed limit review is, are we keeping that in, or is that open for discussion? We're taking that out. Okay. So then I calculate a total addition of $91,250. And if I add that to the current, plus say $2,500 for the tax inserts, you're looking at about 1.2 on the levy.
Yes, I forgot to eliminate the 47,000.
Yeah.
I was only adding, not subtracting.
Yeah. So, and that's inclusive of where we started today. So you've, with the additions today, you've added just under 1% to the levy.
Right. That makes sense now. So that's just Councillor Smith?
I just want to make sure that we don't leave Rob feeling he's constrained at $50,000 for the ditching? I mean,
Oh,
because
no.
that would in fact be no increase to him. We take out 47 from the traffic
Yeah.
speed and give him 50. That's not an increase.
No, but it's overall on the tax. So no, he is going to come back with that amount, but I was just plugging in that to try to add stuff up to recap for the day. But it does help offset the general overall tax increase if we take something out. So, you know, we're trying to.
If I may just add on that $47,000 for the speed limit review, the current budget presented today considers that being funded from the development reserve.
Oh.
So whether if you take it out, the funds will stay, the funding part will stay in the development reserve. So there really is no net impact on the budget. Adding the additional 50,000 for the brushing will have an impact on the budget.
Okay. I did not know that the 47 from the traffic was going to come out there. Well, it'll all be clear soon, Councillor Smith.
Well, just to that point in terms of drawing from reserves, are there not some reserves that we could draw upon, for example, gas tax funds, additional gas tax funds we haven't used to allocate for the work like ditching, roads preparation? Is that a possibility?
So as far as the gas tax funds go, there are certain limitations, and I know it's more for capital projects. Brushing may be considered maintenance and not qualify under the agreement.
Okay, but could we, the 1.5 million that we've allocated for what I'll call largely capital projects in terms of resurfacing and such, portion of those could be drawing on that gas tax reserve, and a portion of that then backfilled to deal with the ditching and brushing.
Yeah, so there is some leverage there for the gas tax money, and so if you decide that you want to use more money from what we have right now, this budget here is drawing, I believe, 195,000 from the reserve, and that's the current year allocation. But we do have some funds in the reserve right now. I think it's upwards of $240,000, and that's just off my memory, where if you would like to draw some of that money to cover the cost of a capital project, and then that money that's in the budget right now can be channeled to a maintenance activity within the transportation budget. So there is some leverage there.
I think that's important, but then, as I said, in communicating to Rob about what the potential is.
Yes.
In terms of ditching and brushing, because it need not all translate into a tax increase.
Okay, good points. And also he's got to, he'll be making his recommendation also based on workload. And you also mentioned that, you know, there's, if it need be, that it can go out to tender. So we'll ask him for all of that. That'll be communicated to him, and we'll bring that back at the January council meeting. So hopefully we can, when is our February budget meeting date set, Barbara, or Mallory? I'm
just pulling it up here, 1 second.
Okay, I may not have that.
It's Tuesday the 16th, starting at 1.
Okay, I have for the budget or for some, I have that.
Oh, sorry, but I thought you were talking about the strategic.
Oh, no,
We'll talk about the same thing. That's Friday the 12th. February.
So Friday
Yeah,
the
sorry
12th.
about that.
Yeah.
Okay, so however, we're going to be discussing, there's two main things that Rob will be bringing back to our January council meeting. Barbara, what is your projected, if we're able to at the regular Dysart council meeting, and we are able to make a decision on these two items, then I guess we can decide if it's necessary to have a February budget meeting, or can you?
Yeah, so if we can make a decision, a firm decision at the January council meeting in terms of the brushing, and if I can walk away with some firm numbers, I can turn around a budget relatively quick. And even if those numbers come to light beforehand, if that could be shared with me, I could potentially even bring a final draft to the February budget meeting.
Well, so what I'm wondering is if the February budget meeting is necessary.
Well, if I get something ahead of the January council meeting, then I can finalize the numbers. We're not talking about a lot of comprehensive changes here for me. So if we're looking at 2 changes, then I can bring something to the January council meeting.
We won't cancel the February budget meeting now. I'm just trying to see the process of when I know we have to pass the resolution that brings the bylaw back, and the bylaw has to come back to another meeting. So either way, we might not actually be passing it to the end of February, but I'm just trying to highlight process. Well, we'll see where we land up at the January council meeting with those couple of discussions. Keep it in your calendars just in case. So if there's nothing else, great discussion, as I said earlier today, and we're still in lockdown and probably will be for some time. So everybody stays safe and healthy and mentally healthy and get outside and enjoy the sunshine. Sure wish I was skiing, but no such luck. So I need a mover and a seconder to confirm the proceedings of today's special council meeting. Is that moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Wood Roberts? Be it resolved that bylaw number 2021-01, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the special council meeting held on January 8, 2021, be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and the corporate seal attached thereto. All in favor? And that passes. And I need a motion to adjourn. Councillor Donaldson, Councillor Smith. Be it resolved that council adjourn its special meeting held on January 8, 2021 at 12:24 p.m. All in favor? And that also carries. Okay, thanks everyone. Have a great day, a great weekend. Take care.